Chapter 931. On the dilapidated imprint mountain, the gate was old and mottled. The rows of houses and palaces were mostly dilapidated and gave off a desolate feeling. In the valleys around the mountain, there were a few hundred mu of spirit fields, planted with spirit grains and some herbs. Hundreds of odd-job disciples in coarse linen clothes were working in the fields, harvesting the spirit grains. At the foot of the mountain, there was an ancient square. It was not big, but there were many fallen leaves, and the ground was covered with weeds and moss. The square was empty. Apart from a few dark brown ancient stone sculptures, there were no guards guarding it. Halfway up the mountain, there was a huge stone gate that was 100 meters tall. Below the gate stood 8 white-robed mystic and lightning realm disciples, guarding listlessly. Halfway up the mountain, there were a few courtyards where the disciples lived. There were hundreds of houses, but there was no activity. It was very quiet. Only a few palaces at the peak of the mountain still gave off a majestic aura. However, those palaces had been in disrepair for a long time, and were somewhat old. The glazed tiles on the roofs did not shine with golden light, as they were covered by moss and weeds. The square at the peak of the mountain also seemed cold and cheerless. There were a few Tongxian realm young disciples dressed in white robes gathered under a large banyan tree, discussing something in low voices. Ji Tianxing observed for a moment, then descended from the sky with Ji Ke. He did not go to the gate to pay a visit. Instead, he passed through the protective mountain array and landed on the square at the peak of the mountain. Swoosh! The white-robed disciples did not notice him, and Ji Ke landing on the square. They were still discussing something trivial. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing frowned and brought Ji Ke under the large banyan tree. When he and Ji Ke reached the tree, the disciples heard the footsteps and stopped their discussion. They turned to look at the two of them. Someone's coming. Hey, who are you two? These two look unfamiliar. Are they guests here to pay a visit to our sect? TSK, stop dreaming. Our sect hasn't had a guest for 3 to 5 years. Who would come to pay a visit to our sect? The 4 disciples looked at Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke suspiciously as they whispered to each other. Upon seeing their reaction and hearing their words, Ji Ke frowned and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing. Brother Tianxing, the Shenhui sect used to be a top sect. How did it end up like this? Look at their inner sect disciples. They are far inferior to our sky-bearing sect's disciples. They don't have the demeanor of disciples from famous sections. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a voice transmission, it's just a rundown second-rate sect. What kind of bearing can its disciples have? Don't worry about these small details. We'll leave once we're done. After saying that, he looked at the 4 young disciples and asked in a dignified tone, where is your sect leader? Go and report the news to him. Tell him that the region lord of Tianchun is here to see him. With his status, there was no need for him to be courteous with the Shenhui sect. He didn't want to waste any more time, so he went straight to the point and told the sect master of the Gods Association to come and greet him. However, the 4 young disciples had blank looks on their faces as they stood rooted to the ground. Sect leader? Are you talking about our sect leader? That's ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Do you think you can see our sect leader just because you want to? Have you sent him a visiting card? Ha ha ha. This guy said he's the region lord of Tianjin? That's ridiculous. Does the Tianjin region have a region lord? Even if there was really a heavenly stellar region lord, how noble was his status? Why would he come to a small sect like our Shenhui sect? Tisk TSK, this guy is young but he's good at acting. He's so good at acting. I almost believed him just now. The 4 young disciples looked at Ji Tianxing with smiles on their faces. They pointed and commented, as if they were waiting to see a joke. Ji Tianxing was so angry that he almost laughed. He frowned and said to himself, I overestimated the Shenhui sect. I didn't expect their disciples to be so ignorant. Ji Ke didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He nodded and said, that's right. These frogs at the bottom of the well are so pitiful. When the 4 young disciples heard their conversation, they became even more jubilant. They laughed so hard that they were swaying back and forth. Ha 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 ha. Look, these two are singing the same tune. It's like they're performing in an opera. Oh, the Tianjin region lord, who is as noble as a star, has come to a quagmire like our Shenhui sect. We're so flattered. Ha ha ha. We've been bored recently. We didn't expect these two idiots to come and put on a show. It's a good way to relieve our boredom. The oldest white-robed disciple waved his hand and pretended to be serious. He coughed and said seriously, "Ahem. Junior brothers, let's stop laughing and have fun. Let's hurry up and get the guards on duty to drive these two dubious guys away. Otherwise, if the elders find out about this, they might punish us." The other three disciples nodded in agreement. "Yes, drive these two away." "Wait here. I'll go get the guards on duty." One of the disciples held back his laughter and glanced at Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku with a mocking look. He was about to go get the guards on duty to drive them away. Ji Tianxing frowned. He didn't want to waste any more time with them. He lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. Bang! A loud, muffled sound exploded. It reverberated through the mountains for dozens of miles. The entire imprint mountain shook 3 times. The houses and palaces on the mountain shook nonstop. Countless tiles fell from the roof. The 100-meter square under everyone's feet instantly collapsed. Dense cracks appeared on the ground and spread out in all directions like a spider web. The 4 white-robed disciples were knocked to the ground on the spot. Their bodies went limp and their eyes widened in horror. The 4 of them fell into the ruins and stared at Ji Tianxing as if they had seen a ghost. After a long period of silence, they finally regained their senses. They immediately scrambled toward the palace not far away. The 4 of them were scared out of their wits. As they fled in panic, they screamed in horror. "Ah! Murder! Sect Master! Something bad has happened. There's an intruder. Someone come quickly." In the blink of an eye, the 4 white-robed disciples disappeared without a trace. Only their hoarse screams echoed on the mountain peak. Seeing this comical scene, Jika covered her mouth and giggled. "Hee hee, that's too funny. Big brother Tianxing, you're too evil. You scared them out of their wits." Ji Tianxing spread his hands and revealed a helpless expression. "To deal with these ignorant and infuriating people, I can only use such a simple and crude method." Jika nodded repeatedly and said with a chuckle, "Fortunately they met you, so they were only punished and were able to keep their lives. If it were any other emperor's son, they might have already killed them." Ji Tianxing shook his head. "They're just ignorant. They don't deserve to die. A small punishment is enough." Chapter 932. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke stood in the square for a while before a dozen people rushed over at lightning speed. The dozen or so experts were all in the Origin Core realm. They rushed out of the various palaces and arrived at the square as fast as lightning. Perhaps they did not hear the shouts of the 4 young disciples. However, Ji Tianxing's stomp had directly shattered the square at the peak of the mountain and caused the entire imprint mountain to shake incessantly. It had alarmed everyone within a radius of dozens of kilometers. The dozen or so experts were only the first to react. After sensing the commotion, they rushed to the square with fear and anger to check the situation. These people were either dressed in purple robes or black robes. They were the elders and deacons of the Shenhui sect. When the crowd arrived at the ruined square, they immediately surrounded Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. They were full of hostility, but their eyes were filled with deep fear and alarm. They all stood about 10 feet away from Ji Tianxing, not daring to approach. "Who is this guy? Is he here to seek revenge? Was he the one who caused that loud explosion? Heavens, he actually shattered the inner square and caused the entire mountain to shake incessantly. This person's strength is incomparably terrifying. Everyone be careful. Quick, go and ask the sect master to come over." The elders and deacons whispered to each other, but no one dared to approach Ji Tianxing, much less attack him. Just as everyone was at a loss and filled with anxiety, someone in the crowd shouted, "Great, the sect master is finally here." Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw a middle-aged man in a golden robe flying over with a serious expression. The skinny middle-aged man in a golden robe and a feathered crown was the Shenhui sect master. Not far behind him were the 4 young disciples whose faces had turned green with fright. The Shenhui sect master stepped onto the square, passed by the elders and deacons, and stood about 10 steps away from Ji Tianxing. The 4 young disciples were so scared that they didn't dare to approach the square. They hid under a big tree at the edge of the square and stuck their heads out to look in this direction. Ji Tianqing looked at the golden-robed man and asked in a dignified tone, "Are you the sect master of the Shenhui sect?" The golden-robed man didn't dare to be careless. He stared at Ji Tianqing and nodded slightly. "That's right. I'm Lin Burang, the current chief of the Shenhui sect. May I ask who you are? Why did you barge into our sect and cause trouble for no reason? Our sect has always been well-behaved and has never offended any other sect." Apparently, the Shenhui sect had lost a lot of talents in the past few decades, and their influence had declined. They could only swallow their pride and struggle to survive. Lin Burang understood the essence of the word tolerance. When he saw Ji Tianqing, he didn't dare to reprimand him, nor did he dare to get angry. Instead, he put on a humble attitude of "let's talk things over nicely." Ji Tianqing glanced at him, then looked around and couldn't help but frown. Among the people present, Lin Burang was the strongest. He had reached Sky Origin Stage LV2. He was also the only Sky Origin Stage expert here. In addition, the other elders and deacons were all in the Origin Core stage. They were not worth mentioning at all. Ji Tianqing saw Lin Burang's humble attitude, so he didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. "I'm Ji Tianqing, the Tianshan region lord. I've come to the Shenhui sect today to investigate a past incident." Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons were stunned when they heard his words. Their faces were filled with disbelief. "Tianshan region lord? Ji Tianqing? It's the Tianshan region lord? Why would such a noble powerhouse come to our Shenhui sect? Ji Tianqing? Why does this name sound so familiar? I remember it now. He's the new Tianshan region lord, the world-famous genius of the Crown Prince. What? He's the #1 genius of our clan, Ji Tianqing, the Crown Prince?" The elders whispered to each other. When they realized Ji Tianqing's identity, they were so shocked that their faces changed dramatically. Their eyes were filled with deep admiration. In the past year, Ji Tianqing had become famous and awe-inspiring. His various legends and deeds had already spread throughout the Central Continent and the Four Corners continent. Especially among the humans in the Southern Continent, his reputation was extremely high. He could be said to be a household name. Although the Shenhui sect had declined, it was still a second-rate sect. Moreover, the Yangon region was right next to the Tianshan region. How could they not know Ji Tianqing's name? After Lin Burang came to his senses, he stared at the elders and deacons sternly, signaling them to be quiet and calm. Then, he bowed to Ji Tianqing in fear and trepidation and said respectfully, "I'm Lin Burang. Greetings, Tianshan region lord. I didn't know Tianshan region lord was coming to our sect. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." The elders and deacons quickly came back to their senses and followed Lin Burang's example. Bowing respectfully to the heavenly deity, Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, "Everyone, please be at ease." Only then did the crowd slowly straighten up, their expressions and eyes becoming more respectful. Lin Burang quickly bowed and stretched out his hand, making a please gesture. He smiled and said, "Lord Ji, you've come from afar. Your presence brings light to our humble abode. I hope Lord Ji doesn't mind our humble abode. Please follow me to the main hall and have a seat. We can talk slowly." "That's fine." Ji Tianqing nodded and followed Lin Burang into the main hall. All the elders and deacons lowered their heads and followed behind him respectfully. When they passed by the edge of the square, the 4 young disciples under the big tree were scared witless. They knelt on the ground with ashen faces and kowtowed repeatedly to beg for mercy. "Tianshan region lord, please forgive us. Just now we were blind and offended your excellency. Please have mercy on us, your excellency. We deserve to die. We are guilty. I hope Tianshan region lord will give us a lighter punishment on account of our young age and ignorance." Ji Tianqing walked past the big tree, surrounded by the crowd. He didn't even bother to look at the 4 people. Lin Burang secretly observed their expressions. In order to please Ji Tianqing, he ordered in a dignified tone, "Disciplinary elder, take these 4 disciples who offended our esteemed guests away and punish them severely." Jiko was kind-hearted. Seeing that the 4 people were scared half to death, he waved his hand and said, "Sect leader Lin, they didn't do it on purpose. There's no need to punish them too harshly. Lin Burang hurriedly bowed and flattered. Thank you, Mississippi. You have the heart of a bodhisattva. You are not calculative with these juniors. After that, he looked at the 4 disciples with a dignified expression and shouted, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and thank this miss for her magnanimity. The 4 disciples came back to their senses and kowtowed, as if they had been pardoned, expressing their gratitude to Ji Ke. It was only now that they realized that the young man who looked similar to them and was wearing a white robe was the legendary Prince Ji Tianxing. If Ji Tianxing was the bright star in the 9 heavens, they were toads in the mud. Chapter 933. In the Shenhui sect's guest hall, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke sat at the head of the table, with spirit fruits, spirit tea, and pastries placed on the table in front of them. Although these things were common to them, and they didn't even want to taste them, these were the spirit fruits and spirit fruits. However, these spiritual fruits and spiritual teas were the most precious treasures in the Shenhui sect. Even Lin Burang was reluctant to taste them. Lin Burang sat at the head of the table on the left side of the hall, and accompanied them submissively. The elders and deacons didn't even have the right to sit. They all stood respectfully in the hall, not daring to make a single noise. Ji Tianxing saw that everyone was trembling with fear and said calmly, Everyone, there's no need to be so nervous. I came to the Shenhui sect this time to find out about a matter from 100 years ago. After I've finished my investigation, I will leave and won't stay in your sect for long. A matter from 100 years ago? Lin Burang frowned slightly. He vaguely guessed something and asked cautiously, Lord Ji, may I ask what matter you want to investigate? Ji Tianxing didn't beat around the bush and said directly, 100 years ago, when your sect was still the #1 sect in the Yangon region, did you build a spirit beast garden and raise a flood dragon as one of the spirit beasts? A flood dragon? Lin Burang frowned and his expression changed. The expressions of the elders and deacons also changed. Some of them were on alert, while others were confused. Lin Burang hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand at the elders and deacons and ordered, All of you leave us. I have something important to discuss with Lord Ji. Everyone understood that what Lin Burang was about to say would involve the secrets of the Shenhui sect, and shouldn't be heard. Thus, all the elders and deacons bowed and left the great hall. In the blink of an eye, only Ji Tianxing, Ji Ke, and Lin Burang were left in the hall. Lin Burang then said to Ji Tianxing with a serious expression, Lord Ji, to be honest, I only became the sect master 40 years ago. 100 years ago, I wasn't even born yet, so I don't know much about the sect. Ji Tianxing stared at him sharply and asked in a deep voice, Even if you were not born, you are the current sect leader. Do you really know nothing about what happened 100 years ago? As he spoke, he released an invisible pressure that enveloped Lin Burang. Lin Burang's back was bent from the pressure. His face was pale, and beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. He bowed in fear and trepidation and said in a low voice, Lord Ji, please show mercy. I only know a little about what happened back then, so I'm not very clear about it. Furthermore, that flood dragon was snatched away by someone back then. It has nothing to do with our sect anymore. Snatch. It was clearly your sect's elder Ji who took it away. How can you say that it was stolen? Ji Tianxing frowned and asked in a dignified voice. Lin Burang's expression changed drastically as he looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Lord Ji, how do you know all this? Ji Tianxing sneered and didn't bother to explain. Ji Ke glanced at Lin Burang and said in a playful tone, Sect leader Lin, why would young Master Ji come to the Shenhui sect in person if he didn't have some important information? Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better not play any tricks. If you tell the truth, you'll still be safe. If you dare to play tricks with young Master Ji, the Shenhui sect might be destroyed by your hands. Lin Burang's body trembled. His expression turned ugly, and his eyes filled with fear. He didn't doubt that with Ji Tianxing's strength and methods, destroying the tiny Shenhui sect would be as easy as flipping over his hand. After a moment of silence, Lin Burang finally calmed down and confessed honestly, Lord Ji, you're right. That flood dragon was indeed handed over by the sect leader to an elder surnamed Ji when our sect was facing a great calamity. He ordered him to take it away from the sect. That elder's surname was Ji and his name was Yuanlong. He was the youngest and most promising elder in our sect, and was highly regarded by the sect leader. However, I don't know where that elder Ji went after taking the flood dragon away from our sect, or where he is now. If you want to investigate that flood dragon, you might as well go to the forbidden area behind our sect's mountain. Perhaps you'll find some clues there. That forbidden area was where the spirit beast garden used to be. It has been sealed by a great formation since 100 years ago. Even now, no one has been able to enter it. Lin Burang's answer was very honest. It was basically the same as what Ji Tianxing knew. He nodded and said, "All right, I'll go to the forbidden area to check it out later. Also, I have another question. Do you know what happened to the Shenhui sect back then? Why did the former number 1 sect suffer such great losses and almost fall apart?" Lin Burang hesitated for a moment before replying in a heavy tone. "Lord Ji, I believe you also understand that there are as many martial sects as there are hairs on an ox in this world. Every great power rises and falls, and no one can last forever, just like those kingdoms in the mortal world. Our sect used to be the number 1 sect in the Yangon region, prosperous and famous. Naturally, we attracted the hostility of many sects and forces. Our sect's greatest enemy was the Green Mountain sect. The Green Mountain sect coveted our sect's most precious treasure, the heavenly prayer mirror, and the flood dragon raised by our sect. As a result, the Green Mountain sect plotted for many years. They gathered 2 other large sects and 1 force to besiege our sect, forcing us to hand over the heavenly prayer mirror and the flood dragon. As the number 1 sect, our sect couldn't be threatened by the Green Mountain sect. As a result, the 4 forces joined forces to besiege our sect. The sect master, elders, caretakers, and disciples of our sect fought a bloody battle, resisting the siege of the 4 forces with their lives. The 2 sides fought for a day and a night. More than half of the swordsmen of our sect were killed in the battle, and the disciples suffered great casualties. At the critical moment, the sect master handed the flood dragon to Elder Ji Yuanlong, ordering him to flee the Shenhui sect with the flood dragon. In the end, the sect master sacrificed his own life to activate the heavenly prayer mirror and self-destruct, perishing together with the swordsmen of the 4 forces. After that calamity, the heavenly prayer mirror was gone, and the flood dragon was nowhere to be found. The swordsmen of our sect either died or fled. Our sect's power declined sharply, almost falling apart. The 4 forces didn't get any benefits, and more than half of their swordsmen were killed or injured. After that calamity, they couldn't recover, and soon declined and disappeared. Lin Burang recounted the events of the past. After hearing this, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but feel sentimental. He couldn't help but think of the grudge between the Tianjian sect and the Sky-holding sect. It was so similar to this. Lin Burang sighed with a complex tone, full of sentiments. Nobody expected that after our sect and the Green Mountain sect fought for so many years, the Heaven and Earth sect would benefit from the conflict, taking advantage of the situation, and becoming the number 1 sect. Our sect, on the other hand, can only guard the inheritance left by our ancestors, living a muddle-headed life, struggling at death's door. Fate is full of ups and downs, and the affairs of the world are unpredictable. Chapter 934. After discussing business, Lin Burang arranged accommodations for Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. The 2 of them had been on the road for more than half a month. They were covered in dust and were a little tired. The investigation of the dragon crystal was not something that could be completed in a day or 2. The 2 of them could only stay in the Shenhui sect for now. Lin Burang treated them as honored guests, so he arranged for them to stay in the best courtyard in the Shenhui sect. After settling them in, Lin Burang tactfully retreated. Ji Ke rested in the courtyard while Ji Tianxing went to Lin Burang's study to read all kinds of books. He was not interested in the various cultivation methods and secret manuals in the study. He picked some ancient books from more than 100 years ago to deepen his understanding of the Shenhui sect. Although there were more than 100 ancient books, he could read them very quickly with his spiritual sense. Half a day passed before he knew it. It was already late at night when he finished reading the hundreds of ancient books. The contents recorded in those ancient books gave him a more thorough understanding of the Shenhui sect from more than 100 years ago. He also knew the whole story of that unforeseen event. He left the study with satisfaction and returned to the courtyard to rest. The night sky was filled with stars, and the silver moon was bright. Ji Tianxing meditated in his room for a while. He felt a little melancholy and could not calm down. He got up and walked to the window. Looking at the starry sky outside, he sank into deep thought and memories. Hundreds of millions of stars dotted the night sky. They shone brightly and flickered. Ji Tianxing looked at the stars in the night sky. Sorrow and longing welled up in his heart. He murmured to himself, "Legend has it that everyone is a star in the sky. I wonder which star is me, and which star is Yao Yao. Yao Yao, where are you now? How are you doing? Are you like me, looking at the stars in the sky and thinking of me?" The bright moon and the brilliance of the stars evoked the longing in his heart. He felt that the night was getting colder and colder. Even the air he breathed was cold and lonely. At the same time, in the snowy plains in the deepest part of the northern desert, a huge dark red river of blood surrounded a huge ice mountain that was 100 miles wide. At the peak of the ice mountain stood an ice crystal palace that had not melted since ancient times. It was the holy land of the demon race, the Heavenly Devil Palace. In the depths of the Heavenly Devil Palace, there was a spacious and solemn secret room. This secret chamber had not been opened for hundreds of years, but tonight, it was opened. The gemstone lamps on the walls lit up with a dark red light, illuminating the entire secret room with a hazy red light. In the middle of the secret room, there was a dark red blood pool with a radius of 10 meters. The pool was filled with an endless amount of dark red blood that was slowly flowing. This blood pool was connected to the sacred river outside the Heavenly Devil Palace and would never dry up. In the middle of the blood pool, there was a 3-meter-tall black altar. The altar was made of hundreds of top materials, and its surface was engraved with ancient demon characters and symbols, as well as 19 ferocious demon god patterns. At the top of the altar was a platform more than 3 meters long and 2 meters wide. A beautiful woman wearing a fiery red wedding dress and a phoenix coronet was lying quietly on the platform. She was Yin Yao, who had been captured by the Demon King. She had been unconscious the entire time, lying on the top of the altar with her eyes closed and her face pale. The dark red blood pool slowly flowed, releasing countless strands of dark red blood energy that gathered at the altar. The altar had been opened and was shining with a dark red light, and it was rippling with a violent, invisible energy. Thousands of strands of black demonic qi mixed with countless strands of dark red blood energy were wrapping around the unconscious Yun Yao and invading her body. Under the corrosion of the blood pool and the altar, her true essence was gradually dissipating, and her body was slowly changing. 3 tall and burly demons stood at the edge of the blood pool. The one in the middle was 10 meters tall, had 2 heads, white hair, and azure wings, and exuded a domineering aura. He was the ancient Demon King. The male demon to the left of the Demon King was covered in black armor, and only his eyes were exposed. He exuded a cold aura of death. He was the Demon Commander, Dark Knight Demon Commander. On the right of the Demon King was a burly man with 4 wings, 6 arms, and a single eye. He was the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. The Demon King was holding a mysterious, pitch-black scepter in his hand. It was the Demon God Scepter. There was a strand of black qi at the top of the scepter. It was the Dream Demon. The Demon King and the 2 demon commanders looked at Yin Yao on the top of the altar quietly and watched her being corroded by the blood energy and demonic qi. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander stared at Yin Yao for a while and couldn't help but pout. He muttered in confusion, "I've heard that Yin Yao from the Cloud Spirit Palace is a famous genius in the middle ground. She's also one of the most beautiful women in the human race. I wonder what kind of taste the insects in the human race have. How can a woman like her be considered a beautiful woman? She's short and skinny, and her skin is frighteningly white. She's not tall and strong at all. Where does her beauty come from? In Bunchui's eyes, she's so ugly that it's frightening." The Dream Demon nodded in agreement. "That's right. The lowly human race is so pitiful. They don't know what a real beauty is." Look at the women in the demon race. They're all tall and strong with strong muscles. They're filled with power. Their dark purple skin is covered with hair. That's what a beauty is. The Dark Knight demon commander remained cold and silent the entire time. However, from his eyes, it was clear that he agreed with the Dream Demon and the Sky Barbarian demon commander. The ancient demon emperor waved his hand and said in a dignified voice, "I took a huge risk and went to the middle ground personally to capture Yun Yao and bring her back to the Sky Demon Palace. So what if she's ugly? I want the Neptunian Divine Pearl. Haha. Yun Yao is regarded as a pure fairy by the insects in the human race, but I'm going to use the 1,000 demon blood pool and the samurai soul altar to change her and turn her into a subject of the demon race. After 49 days, she'll lose her humanity and become the blood god of the primordial evil demons. By then, she'll serve me wholeheartedly and use the power of the Neptunian Divine Pearl to remove the curse and shackles of my people. I'm going to make her the saintess of my people so that she can change the fate of my people, help me revive the demon race, and realize my revenge." The Sky Barbarian demon commander nodded and smirked when he heard the ancient demon emperor's words. His Majesty the Devil Emperor is wise and mighty, unparalleled in this world. The fairy of the human race is going to become the saintess of my people. She's willing to serve us. If the Cloud Spirit Palace and the Imperial Court of the human race hear about this, they'll be so angry that they'll vomit blood, right? The Dream Demon was also excited. Yun Yao has killed so many of our warriors, but she's going to serve us in the future and fight against the human race. Chapter 935. It was late at night. Ji Tianxing stood by the window for 2 hours before he gradually calmed down. It wasn't until dawn that he returned to his bed to meditate. 6 hours later it was dawn. After daybreak he ended his cultivation. He took out the black dragon sword and placed it on the table, asking, "Little black dragon, do you remember anything about this place?" The black dragon sword transformed into a little black dragon with a whoosh, revealing its 2-meter-long body and dancing in the air. The little black dragon circled around the room and even flew into the sky to observe for a while before returning to Ji Tianxing. "Old Ji, I vaguely remember living here for a few years when I was young. However, this place is a bit different from what I remember, so I can't be sure." Ji Tianxing nodded and left the courtyard with the little black dragon. Ji Ke stayed in the courtyard to rest while he brought the little black dragon to the forbidden area behind the Godseal Peak. This forbidden area was 15 kilometers away from the Godseal Peak. 100 years ago, it was the divine Huisek's spirit beast garden. However, after that great battle, the spirit beast garden had long been reduced to ruins. When Ji Tianxing arrived at the ruins, he saw that the area was filled with jagged rocks and earth, as well as thorny undergrowth and weeds. A flock of colorful birds were chirping on the branches of the forest. A few low-level demon beasts were passing through the forest, their pace languid and leisurely. It was obvious that this area was the divine Huisek's forbidden area. Sect disciples were forbidden from approaching it. Even sect master Lin Burang and the elders and deacons rarely came here, and no one had ever entered the forbidden area before. Ji Tianxing used his spiritual sense to investigate the area and found some clues. He also guessed the reason. The ruins within 15 kilometers, as well as the underground beneath the ruins, were all sealed by a Grand Heaven Origin formation. This was a top-notch Grand Heaven Origin formation. It was made up of 4 overlapping Grand Heaven Origin formations and used 3 profound formation techniques. Only a top-notch Array Dao Grandmaster would be able to break this sealing array. In the Shunhui sect, only Lin Burang had reached the Sky Origin stage, and he was only at the 2nd level of the Sky Origin stage. With his strength and knowledge, it was obviously impossible for him to break this top-notch Grand Tianyuan array. Ji Tianxing didn't waste any more time. He hurriedly opened his pure heart Dharma eye and executed his Array Dao Lost Art. He began to crack this sealing grand array. Although the structure of the formation and the method of setting it up were very profound and complicated, however, this was not a problem for him at all. When he had not yet reached the Sky Origin stage, he had already broken the seal of the Dragon Mountain Tomb. The grand formation left behind by Emperor Yi was many times more profound than this sealing grand formation. In just an hour's time, Ji Tianxing had successfully cracked the seal formation. The forest in front of him, which was originally empty, suddenly lit up with a dazzling white light, condensing into a door of light. Shua! Ji Tianxing stepped through the door of light without any hesitation. He brought the little black dragon through the sealing array and into the forbidden grounds. The forbidden grounds were hidden in the forest. It was very well hidden and could not be seen from the outside. The ground was overgrown with weeds and littered with gravel and dirt. Broken and decayed weapon fragments could be faintly seen in some cracks. In the depths of the forest, some broken walls and half-broken statues could be vaguely seen. The forbidden grounds were deathly silent. Apart from Ji Tianxing and the little black dragon, there was nothing else alive. Ji Tianxing slowly walked deeper into the forbidden grounds. His sharp eyes scanned his surroundings, and he released his spiritual sense to investigate a radius of 1,000 meters. The little black dragon followed closely behind him, its eyes darting about as it curiously observed its surroundings. Little black dragon, this was the spirit beast garden from back then. Do you still remember it? The little black dragon nodded and said in a muffled voice, I vaguely remember a little, but this place has been reduced to ruins. I can't recognize it anymore. Ji Tianxing did not say anything else. He led the little black dragon deeper into the forbidden grounds. As he went deeper into the forbidden grounds, he saw more and more traces and remains. Not only were there many statues and broken walls, there were also the remains of human martial artists, the fragments of various weapons, and the corpses of spirit beasts. From these traces, one could see just how desperate the battle that had taken place here back then had been. 2 hours later, Ji Tianxing had investigated an area with a radius of 30 li. He saw countless traces of battle, but he was unable to find any useful clues. Thus, he went underground and continued to investigate the ruins. The underground was gloomy and devoid of light. Craters and broken tunnels were everywhere, and there were many traces of battle. The corpses of spirit beasts and martial artists were piled up here. Ji Tianxing spent 6 hours investigating the underground and found a few scattered clues. By the time he left the forbidden grounds with the little black dragon and returned to his residence, it was already afternoon. Ji Ke had already finished his cultivation and was waiting in the reception room for his return. Upon seeing him enter the reception room, Ji Ke hurriedly came up and asked in concern, Big brother Tianxing, what's the situation like? Have you found any clues and information? Ji Tianxing nodded calmly and said, I found some clues. Combined with the information I learned from the books I read yesterday, I have an answer. When the great grandmaster of the Ji family left with the little black dragon, the dragon crystal was still in the little black dragon's body. However, when the great grandmaster of the Ji family fled from the Yangon region and headed to the Tianshan region, he was pursued by a large number of highly achieved swordsmen. The little black dragon has some vague recollections, saying that his dragon crystal was dug out during a battle. At the time, he was severely wounded and passed out. Ji Ke furrowed his brows and asked in confusion, Are the people who killed the great grandmaster of the Ji family, the highly achieved swordsmen of the Green Mountain sect, and the other 3 major forces? After some thought, Ji Tianxing analyzed solemnly, According to the information I've learned, I guess it's not the people of the 4 major forces. It should be someone else. If it's the people of the 4 major forces, it'll be troublesome. The 4 major forces have been destroyed and disbanded one after another, so it's impossible to investigate further. If it's not them, who could have done it? Ji Ke's brows furrowed tightly, feeling even more puzzled. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a smile as he said calmly, If I'm not wrong, it should be the Qingquan sect who did it. After all, the Heaven and Earth sect is the biggest winner in this battle. It's very likely that they'll sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight while the 2 sides fight, and then launch an attack afterwards. That makes sense. Ji Ke nodded in agreement and asked, Big brother Tianxing, what are you going to do then? Are you going to the Heaven and Earth sect to continue the investigation? Ji Tianxing thought for a while and said with a smile, This is only our guess. We don't have any clues or evidence, So how can we continue the investigation? We'll pay a visit to the Heaven and Earth sect and ask the sect master of the Heaven and Earth sect about this matter. I remember that the heavenly concubine in Suwen is the principal disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect. Chapter 936. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and left the Shenhui sect with Ji Ke. When the two of them left, Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons all respectfully sent them off. When the two of them flew into the sky and disappeared into the distance at lightning speed, Lin Burang and the others heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. It was not only a great honor for them to have someone as honorable as the Tianxin territorial lord stay in the Shenhui sect, but it was also a great pressure. In the past 2 days, Lin Burang and the other elders and deacons were on tenterhooks. They were afraid that something would go wrong. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke had finally left, and the heavy burden in their hearts had finally been lifted. The Qinkuan sect was the most powerful sect in the Yong'an region. It was located in the Taiwu mountain range, which had a top-notch spiritual vein. In the past few decades, the Qinkuan sect's power had grown rapidly. It was now at its peak. The entire Taiwu mountain range was the Qinkuan sect's territory. There were dozens of villages and a few cities with at least 2 million citizens. They all worked for the Qinkuan sect. The Qinkuan sect had more than 30,000 disciples and servants. It was said that they had 8,000 outer sect disciples, more than 1,000 inner sect disciples, and more than 100 elders and deacons. Furthermore, the Qinkuan sect had 3 ethereal cultivation stage cultivators guarding it. The Qinkuan sect dominated the Yong'an region. They were powerful enough to intimidate dozens of kingdoms and hundreds of forces. After the emperor's concubine selection, the Qinkuan sect's status skyrocketed because of the relationship between the emperor and the imperial court. In the past, no matter how powerful the Qinkuan sect was, they still had to rely on the Yong'an region lord. Ever since the first disciple of the Qinkuan sect, An Suwen, was chosen as the heavenly concubine, the Qinkuan sect's status skyrocketed. They were now on par with the Yong'an region lord. It was said that even the Yong'an region lord had to be respectful to the Qinkuan sect. After all, the Qinkuan sect had the emperor and the imperial court as their backing. Who would dare to offend them? The Heaven and Earth sect's reputation was no longer limited to the Yong'an region. It had even spread to the surrounding regions. It had become the most favored and most prosperous sect in the 9 southern regions. This information was obtained by Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke after they arrived at the Taiwu mountain range. When Ji Ke heard this news, he was worried. He transmitted a message to Ji Tianxing. Brother Tianxing, Qinkuan sect is like the sun in the sky now. They are extremely arrogant and despotic. If we go and look for Qinkuan sect head like this, what if they don't buy it and don't give us any face? Ji Tianxing wasn't worried at all. He smiled faintly and said, "If we can't talk nicely, then we can only talk with our fists. Strength is the absolute truth. A mere Qinkuan sect could only reign supreme in the southern region. Could it be that they would dare to bully us? If Qinkuan sect doesn't know what's good for them, I don't mind teaching them a lesson to wake them up." Ji Ke looked at him. His clear eyes shone brightly as he smiled and said, "Brother Tianxing, you are becoming more and more domineering." Ji Tianxing smiled and waved his hand. He explained, "I'm not domineering. I'm just in a hurry." The two of them chatted as they flew in the sky. Before long, the two of them arrived at the center of the Taiwu mountain range. They landed at the foot of the Taiwu mountain. This was a towering mountain that was 1,000 feet tall. It was also the core of the spiritual vein. The Heaven and Earth spiritual energy was extremely dense. At the foot of the mountain was a huge square. It was clean and tidy and looked majestic. Hundreds of young martial artists were queuing up in the square. They were filled with anticipation as they waited for their strength to be tested. These people were all young talents from various countries. They all dreamed of becoming a disciple of Qinkuan sect. From then on, they would have a meteoric rise. At the very least, if they could become a servant in Qinkuan sect, they would have a chance to be promoted to an outer sect disciple and change their fate. A few deacons in black robes were sitting behind a long table with their heads held high, testing the young warriors' strengths, realms and talents one by one. These deacons had arrogant looks on their faces. They didn't even look at the young martial artists. If they didn't like the young martial artists, they would hurl insults at them. A few young martial artists who were filled with anticipation, but failed the test, were scolded by the deacons. They were too agitated and delayed the cue. Not only that, a few Qingquan sect disciples even grabbed onto them and tossed them out of the crowd. Those young martial artists who were humiliated could only bear with it and leave pathetically. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke stood in the sky and witnessed the scene with their own eyes. Their faces were somewhat gloomy. Qingquan sect is too arrogant. Ji Ke snorted. He had a bad impression of Qingquan sect. Ji Tianqing frowned, but didn't say anything. He couldn't care less about such trivial matters. He flew across the square with Ji Ke and landed at the mountain gate halfway up the mountain. The mountain gate, which was 100 meters tall, was majestically carved. The words Qingquan sect were written on it in flamboyant calligraphy. It exuded a grand and majestic aura. There were 36 young disciples in white robes, standing guard at the foot of the mountain gate. These disciples were all at LV5, or LV6 of the mystic enlightening realm. They carried swords on their backs and looked arrogant. When Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke walked towards the mountain gate, a young disciple who was about 30 years old extended his hand to stop them. This person was the captain of the guards. He was at LV8 of the mystic enlightening realm. He had a majestic aura, and his eyes were sharp. He looked at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke expressionlessly and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He looked at the scene behind the mountain gate calmly. Ji Ke was displeased with the Qingquan sect. He said arrogantly, "Go and report to your sect leader that the Tianqian territorial lord has arrived with the demon tribe's princess. Ask him to come and welcome them." The captain of the guards was stunned. He looked at Ji Ke and Ji Tianqing in a daze. After a while he came back to his senses. He shouted angrily, "Bastards! Who are the two of you? How dare you fool me like this?" The 30 over white-robed guards at the foot of the mountain gate couldn't help but laugh mockingly. "Ha ha ha! What a joke! The Tianqian territorial lord and the demon tribe's princess have arrived? These two are really good at making things up. Hee hee, how dare these two reckless fellows come to our Qingquan sect to deceive us? They must be tired of living. This man and woman are so young. How dare they fool us and ask to meet our sect leader? Why don't they take a piss and look at themselves in the mirror? Sigh. Our sect has been flourishing in recent years. Many commoners dream of joining our sect. They are willing to take the risk and come up with all sorts of schemes." Chapter 937. Many of the guards roared with laughter as they looked at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke with ridicule and contempt. Ji Ke immediately frowned. Her eyes were filled with anger as she was about to scold the crowd. Ji Tianqing gently waved his hand, indicating that she did not need to say anything. He looked coldly at the captain of the guards. His eyes were sharp as he said in a dignified tone, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Immediately report the news to your sect leader. I will only give you this one chance. Don't make a mistake." With that, he ignored the captain of the guards and turned his back to the mountain gate, waiting silently. The captain of the guards was stunned once again. He furrowed his brows and thought about it with complicated feelings. He instinctively did not believe that Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke were the Tianqian region lord and the demon princess. This was simply too absurd. However, he could see that Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke were extraordinary and unfathomable. They were definitely not ordinary people. Therefore, he was very conflicted and could not make a decision. The 30 over guards once again burst into laughter. They were laughing so hard that they were swaying back and forth. "Ha! This is too funny. This guy really knows how to act. He actually dares to threaten our captain. He must be tired of living. Is this guy's head stuck in the door? He actually wants to meet our sect leader, and still dares to be so arrogant. Senior brothers, don't just stand there. Hurry up and take those two guys down. Give them a good beating, and make them scram down the mountain." A few of the guards said as they rushed towards Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke. They revealed mocking sneers, and were about to capture them. The captain of the guards hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he did not stop them. He decided to wait and see. He wanted to see Ji Tianxing's strength first before making a decision. In the blink of an eye, 5 white-robed guards surrounded Ji Tianxing. They all used their capturing techniques and reached out to grab Ji Tianxing. Sigh. The king of hell is easy to meet, but the little demons are hard to deal with. Ji Tianxing sighed silently, and his face immediately became cold and solemn. In the next moment, his entire body burst forth with a violent and invisible energy, exploding with a loud bang. Boom! With a muffled explosion, the 5 white-robed guards were shaken by the invisible force and spat out blood. They were sent flying like sandbags and fell to the ground. All 5 of them had suffered internal injuries. After they landed on the ground, their vision turned black and they fainted. Seeing this scene, many of the guards were dumbfounded on the spot. Their faces were filled with horror. That guy didn't even move his hand, and he sent them flying? Oh my God! How is this possible? He actually has such terrifying strength. Who is this guy? After the guard captain came back to his senses, he immediately shouted in shock and anger. You dare to behave atrociously in our sect? You are too arrogant. We have to capture you, or else we won't be able to answer to the elders of the sect. Go take them down. After the guard captain gave the order, he pulled out his sword from behind his back and charged towards Ji Tianxing. The 30 or so white-robed guards also drew their swords and surrounded Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke from all directions, joining forces to attack them. They knew that Ji Tianxing was extremely powerful, and they were no match for him. However, since Ji Tianxing dared to hurt someone in front of the sect, as guards, they had to bear the responsibility. They had to capture Ji Tianxing and not bring shame to the Qingquan sect's reputation. This had nothing to do with one's cultivation level. It was about the sect's reputation. Of course, after the guard captain gave the order to capture Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke, he did not forget to send someone to the peak of the mountain to report the news to the deacon and ask for help. The 30 over guards joined forces to display their sword skills. Sword radiance covered the sky as they charged towards Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. Ji Tianxing casually raised his right hand and waved his sleeves. More than 30 dazzling sword radiance shot out like golden fireworks. Bang 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 bang. After a series of dull thuds, the golden sword radiance broke through the joint attack of the guards. The 30 over guards were sent flying as they fell to the ground with blood spurting out of their mouths. Thud thud thud. The guards fell to the ground in a mess. After they fell to the ground, they could not get up. They clutched their chests and cried out in pain. Ji Tianxing could not be bothered to look at them. He led Ji Ke through the crowd and walked into the sect. His expression was calm as usual as he walked steadily towards the peak of the mountain. At the same time, the commotion at the foot of the mountain had already alerted the patrolling guards and countless Qingquan sect disciples. When Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke were about 100 meters away, 2 groups of guards rushed towards them. However, these guards were afraid of Ji Tianxing's strength and did not dare to take the initiative to attack. As Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke approached the peak of the mountain, more and more guards and disciples rushed over after hearing the news. There were more than 100 of them. Everyone was vigilant as they followed Ji Tianxing to the top of the mountain with their swords and sabers in their hands. After a while, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke reached the peak of the mountain and arrived at a square. There were more than 10 magnificent palaces on the peak of the mountain. They looked majestic and majestic. 2 elders in purple robes rushed to the square with a few deacons in black robes. Their faces were dark. The hundreds of guards and disciples suddenly had a backbone as they bowed to the 2 elders in purple robes and complained about Ji Tianxing's crimes. Elderly Elder Kai, you're finally here. These 2 fellows trespassed into our sect's mountain gate and even killed people. They injured more than 30 guards. Elders, that young man in white robes is extremely arrogant. You must punish him harshly to avenge our sect's guards. The 2 elders came to the square and stopped Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. The skinny and white-haired elderly looked at Ji Tianxing with a dark expression and shouted, "Bastard! How dare you behave so atrociously in our Qingquan sect? Are you tired of living?" The other tall and burly Elder Kai also shouted with a dignified face, "Boy, I don't care who you are. Since you dare to cause trouble in our sect, I will make sure you suffer the consequences today." Although the other deacons in black robes didn't say anything, they were filled with animosity. They quickly spread out and surrounded Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. Their bodies were filled with powerful energy, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. Ji Tianxing glanced at the two purple-robed elders indifferently and said in a cold tone, "I came here to visit the Qiankuan sect leader and asked the guards to report the news out of good intentions. However, they dared to spout nonsense and even tried to attack me. I only taught them a lesson and didn't kill them. That's already very merciful of me. I'll repeat myself one last time. I'm Ji Tianxing, the Tianshan region leader. Today, I'm here to visit the Qiankuan sect leader. I have something important to ask him. Go and report to him, and ask him to come and see me immediately." Chapter 938. Ji Tianxing's voice was not loud, and there was no anger in it. However, his voice was powerful and majestic. It was like a heavy hammer that hit the hearts of the people. The two elders, a few deacons, the guards, and the disciples felt their hearts beat wildly, and their faces changed. Tianshan region leader Ji Tianxing? Is he the emperor's son whose name shook the world? He is Ji Tianxing? How is that possible? The legendary Tianshan region lord, Ji Tianxing, is very young, handsome, and in high spirits. This person fits the description. What should we do? The Tianshan region leader has come to our sect. What is he trying to do? The guards and disciples started to discuss among themselves as they looked at Ji Tianxing with complicated expressions. There was some reverence, but also some suspicion and wariness. The faces of the two elders were also very ugly. They looked at each other and secretly exchanged opinions. Then they made up their minds. Elderly suppressed the shock and fear in his heart and said to Ji Tianxing sternly, "Young Master Ji, although you are the emperor's son and the Tianshan region leader, you have a noble status. However, this is not Zhong province or your Tianshan region. This is Yong'an region. Our Qiankuan sect is the most powerful sect in Yong'an region. We are not a small sect that anyone can bully. Young Master Ji has come to visit our sect leader. However, you are not sincere at all. Instead, you are so arrogant, and you even injured our guards. This is an insult to our sect. Young Master Ji, would you be polite to someone who has insulted you? Do you think our sect leader would still want to see you after you have insulted our sect?" Elder Li's words were spoken in a rhythmic manner. His voice was full of emotion and was very imposing. Elder Kai and the deacons immediately nodded in agreement. That's right. What Elder Li said is absolutely right. Our Qiankuan sect is not to be bullied by anyone. We have our dignity and pride. So what if he is the emperor's son? Could it be that the crown prince can do whatever he wants and be arrogant and despotic? Hearing the crowd's words, Ji Ke was so angry that her face turned pale. She gritted her teeth and cursed. These despicable bastards are so hypocritical and disgusting. It was clearly them who were arrogant, domineering, and overbearing, but they actually pushed the blame onto us. How despicable. Ji Tianxing did not get angry. He looked coldly at Elder Li and asked in a dignified tone, "So you are asking me to leave?" Elder Li grinned and sneered arrogantly. "Haha, it's good that you understand. Young Master Ji, I advise you to withdraw from here, so as to avoid damaging our relationship. If things really get out of hand, our sect will definitely report this matter to the imperial court and ask His Majesty to make a decision. At that time, young Master Ji should think of a way to explain things to the emperor. Moreover, you are a famous emperor's son. If the people of the world know that you use your status to do whatever you want and bully your own sect." Ji Tianxing frowned slightly. His tone grew colder as he asked, "Are you threatening me?" Elder Li's lips curled into a cold smile. He looked at Ji Tianxing mockingly and did not answer. Ji Tianxing asked again, "Let me ask you one last question. What did you say just now? Was it your idea or your sect leaders? Is there a difference?" Elder Li raised his eyebrows and asked in an arrogant tone, "Don't tell me you think that just because of your status and reputation, the sect leader will let bygones be bygones and allow you to do whatever you want, and even receive you warmly." Elder Kai, The deacons, disciples, and guards immediately burst out laughing at such a merciless, sarcastic remark. Jiku was so angry that she gritted her teeth, and her eyes were burning with anger. Anyone who dared to bully Ji Tianxing would be her greatest enemy. She glared at Elderly coldly and shouted angrily, "A mere Qingkuan sect dares to be so arrogant. What an eye-opener! And you old bastard, you look so smug and arrogant. You're really disgusting." Elderly's expression immediately changed, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Who the hell are you, you lowly servant girl? How dare you insult me? Do you think that just because you are Ji Tianxing's servant, you can insult others? You." Jiku was suddenly enraged, her entire body surging with anger and majestic true qi. Before she could fly into a rage, Ji Tianxing, who was beside her, brazenly attacked. Swoosh! In a flash, he turned into a golden shadow and appeared in front of Elderly. He raised his hand and slapped Elderly. Everyone's vision blurred. They couldn't see Ji Tianxing's movement clearly. They didn't even know what had happened. With a paw sound, Elderly flew out diagonally. He rolled and fell 10 meters away. With a putong sound, he smashed onto the ground. Half of his face was swollen like a pig's head. A few white teeth fell out of his mouth and blood bubbled out. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. The square was dead silent. Elderly sat on the ground in fear. He covered his swollen face with both hands and stared at Ji Tianxing. You bastard, how dare you attack me?" Other than fear, his heart was filled with humiliation and anger. His entire body was shaking. Ji Tianxing actually sent him flying with a single slap in front of all the elders, deacons, and disciples. This was definitely an unforgettable humiliation in his life. Unparalleled anger and humiliation filled him with murderous intent. His eyes became dark red and bloodshot. He couldn't wait to kill Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a cold tone, "How dare you insult the princess of the Demon Imperial Court? You deserve to die. You should feel lucky that Prince Kunwu is not here. Otherwise, your head would have fallen to the ground." How could Elderly, who was extremely angry, listen to these words? He jumped up from the ground and let out an angry roar. He pounced on Ji Tianxing crazily. "Everyone go and take him down." Ji Tianxing frowned and shouted in a low voice, "You're courting death." As he spoke, he lifted his right leg and viciously kicked Elderly in the chest. Bang! Crack! With a muffled sound accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, Elderly was sent flying again. He was kicked 100 feet away and smashed heavily on the ground. His chest caved in deeply and became a mess of flesh and blood. His white bones were exposed. More than 10 of his sternum were broken. Due to his serious injuries, he blacked out on the spot and fainted. Elder Kai and a few deacons, as well as many guards and disciples, were about to attack Ji Tianxing. Seeing this, everyone was so frightened that their faces turned pale. They all stopped charging and froze on the spot. Ji Tianxing's cold gaze swept across the crowd. He brought Ji Ke to the main hall of the Heaven and Earth sect. Chapter 939. Ji Tianxing was exuding a domineering aura and killing intent. He led Ji Ke into the main hall of the Qingkuan sect, and no one dared to stop him. Elder Kai and the deacons were glaring at him with hatred. They followed him into the main hall, but no one dared to attack him. However, there were a few quick-witted disciples who hurriedly left the square to report the news to the other elders. After a while, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke walked through the square and arrived at the entrance of the Qingkuan Palace. The Qingkuan Palace was the main hall of the Qingkuan sect. It was the place where the sect leader and the elders discussed matters. When Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke arrived at the entrance of the main hall, there were 9 elders in purple robes and 30 deacons in black robes. Among the elders and deacons, there were 2 elders who were at ethereal cultivation, while the rest were at origin core cultivation. "How dare you kill in our Qingkuan sect? You are dead meat. Ji Tianxing, you are too arrogant. Stop him. No matter what, we have to protect the dignity of our sect. Our sect leader is in seclusion. Everyone stop him. We cannot let him escape. It doesn't matter if he is the Tianxin region leader. We have the support of the heavenly concubine and the emperor. Let's report this to the imperial court and let the emperor punish him." The elders shouted and jumped out to surround Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. Of the two elders in the lead, one was a white-haired old man. The other was a burly middle-aged man like an iron tower. The two of them were the Grand Elder and Second Elder of the Qiankuan sect. They were at Sky Origin Stage 3 and 2 respectively. The two of them stood at the entrance of the main hall and stared at Ji Tianxing coldly. They shouted, "Ji Tianxing, you asked for it. Don't blame me for being merciless. You've humiliated our sect like this. Our sect is irreconcilable with you. We will not let this go." As they spoke, the two of them took the initiative to attack. They attacked Ji Tianxing from the left and right. The other 7 elders also launched their attacks one after another, besieging Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. Suddenly, a dazzling true origin light shone in front of the main hall. A violent shockwave exploded. Ji Ke had long been filled with anger. She was about to strike back and ruthlessly teach these elders, who couldn't distinguish right from wrong. However, Ji Tianxing was faster than her. He waved his hands and golden sword rays filled the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Hundreds of golden sword lights erupted with unstoppable and violent power, instantly exploding in all directions. At this moment, a dazzling 9-leaf golden lotus emerged from the golden sword radiance. It looked dazzling and mystical. Bam, bam, bam. A series of explosions GT on main hall. The 9 elders were sent flying. They spat out mouthfuls of blood as they landed 100 feet away. Each of them suffered at least 3 slashes. There were 3 huge wounds on their bodies. Dark red blood gushed out and splattered on the ground. Their purple robes were drenched in blood. Their clothes were tattered as they lay on the ground in a wretched state. They kept twitching and screaming, unable to get to their feet for the time being. The black-robed elders who were closer to them suffered as well. They were sent flying by the dark golden sword rays. Their bodies were covered in blood as they screamed in agony. In just a blink of an eye, the main hall's entrance was empty. With Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke as the center, nobody dared to come within 100 feet of them. Ji Tianmain had severely injured 9 elders with a single move. Among them were 2 Tianyuan realm experts. This scene instantly stunned everyone present. Everyone's eyes widened, revealing an incomparably horrified expression. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was the incarnation of the devil in their eyes. He was invincible. A moment later, everyone came back to their senses and immediately exploded. They all let out screams of fear and despair and fled in all directions in panic. Ah! Murder! Help! Ji Tianxing is on a killing spree. Quick! Get the sect leader out of there. We're done for. The 9 elders have all been severely injured. Ji Tianxing is going to wash our sect with blood. There were more than 100 people in front of the main hall. However, all of them ran away in just a blink of an eye. The remaining 9 elders and a dozen elders were severely injured. They lay on the ground covered in blood. There was no way they could escape. Ji Tianxing did not want to waste any time. He grabbed a black-robed elder and shouted, "Where's your sect leader cultivating in seclusion? Bring me to him." The black-robed elder was scared out of his wits. When Ji Tianxing grabbed him, his face turned pale. He was sweating profusely as he trembled. I know. I'll bring you to him. Please, don't kill me. Sect leader is at the back. In the secret chamber of the Qiantian Palace. Ji Tianxing grabbed the black-robed elder and walked towards the Qiantian Palace. At this moment, in the sky above the Palace of Cosmos, a streak of colorful light flew past, and an extremely anxious and worried roar burst out. Stop! In the next moment, a middle-aged man in a long golden robe, with a burly figure and a dignified appearance, descended from the sky and landed in front of the main hall. The man in the golden robe was the sect leader of the Qiantian Palace, Kong Tianxin. Previously, he had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret chamber of the Qiantian Palace. Just now, one of the elders knocked on his door and woke him up. The elder then reported the situation to him. When he heard that Ji Tianxing had come to the Qiantian Palace and had a conflict with the elders, he rushed over. However, when he landed in front of the door of the main hall and saw the situation clearly, he realized that he was too late. The ground in front of the main hall was filled with cracks and gullies. Many elders and deacons were lying on the ground with blood all over their bodies. They were groaning and screaming in pain. Seeing this scene, Kong Tianxing was both furious and shocked. Her face was extremely ugly. Ji Tianxing threw away the deacon in his hand and looked at Kong Tianxing coldly. He asked in a deep voice, "You are the Qingkuan sect leader?" Kong Tianxing looked at him as well. When he saw who he was, his eyes widened. He looked as if he was facing a great enemy. "You are Ji Tianxing, the territory leader of the Tianxin territory?" Ji Tianxing nodded, and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said mockingly, "Sect leader Kong, your Qingkuan sect has been arrogant recently." Kong Tianxing's expression changed, and she asked in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, why do you say that? Our Qian Tian Palace leader is just a small name in the Yong'an territory. How could we be worthy of your attention? Moreover, our Qian Tian Palace leader has never offended you before. Why are you?" Ji Tianxing laughed coldly. Hee. Sect leader Kong, you don't have to be so humble. What you just said is completely different from what the elders, deacons, and disciples of your Qian Tian Palace leader have said. Qian Tian Palace leader is now the most powerful sect in the Yong'an territory. Their first disciple in Suan is now a heavenly lady. Chapter 940. Upon hearing Ji Tianxing's words, Kong Tianxing's expression changed. The Qingkuan sect had been living in seclusion for a long time. Most of them were ignorant of the situation in Zhong Plains. In the entire Qingkuan sect, he was the only one who knew the situation in Zhong Plains. Of course, he knew that no matter how powerful the Qingkuan sect was, they had no right to look down on the emperor's son, especially when the emperor's son was the #1 prodigy of the human race, the territory lord, who was personally selected by the emperor himself. Kong Tianxing lowered his head and bowed to Ji Tianxing. He put on a fearful expression and quickly explained, "Why do you say that, young Master Ji? Our disciple in Suan has indeed become a heavenly lady. However, we would never dare to be arrogant and disrespect the territory lord because of this." Ji Tianxing looked at him with a cold smile. He did not want to waste his breath on him. Many elders and deacons crawled up from the ground, covered in blood, and surrounded Ji Tianxing and Kong Tianxing in the middle. Initially, when they saw Kong Tianxing's arrival, they thought that they would finally be able to vent their frustrations. However, they did not expect Kong Tianxing to not only not be angry, but he also did not dare to do anything to Ji Tianxing. Instead, he acted submissively. All the elders and deacons felt humiliated and angry. They did not understand what was going on. The Grand Elder, who was the leader of the elders, shouted angrily, "Sect leader, Ji Tianxing is the one who bullied us. He thinks that he is the territory lord of Tianxin and does not respect our Qingkuan sect. Not only did he barge into our sect, injuring more than 30 guards, but he also injured Elder Li and knocked him unconscious. We tried to stop him, but he attacked us without saying a word and injured all of us. Sect leader, you must not be fooled by him, and you must not yield to him." The other elders also chimed in, accusing Ji Tianxing of his crimes with righteous indignation. "Sect leader, Ji Tianxing has gone too far. Qingkuan sect will not allow him to humiliate us. Otherwise we will lose face. Sect leader, Ji Tianxing is so arrogant and despotic. Are we going to swallow this humiliation? You should report this matter to the heavenly concubine now. The heavenly concubine will definitely seek justice for our sect. Yes, the Son of Heaven and His Majesty the Emperor will definitely not allow Ji Tianxing to bully our sect like this. Sect leader, if you don't bring Ji Tianxing to justice today, how can our Qingkuan sect establish itself in Yong and region in the future? Wouldn't he be ridiculed by the world?" When Ji Tianxing and Ji Ko heard the elders' cries of pain, they looked on with disdain and disdain. Kong Tianxing, on the other hand, was so angry that he was trembling. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. He glared at the few elders and growled with a voice that sounded like muffled thunder. "Shut up, a bunch of bastards. You've committed such a grave mistake, yet you still dare to distort right and wrong." All the elders and deacons were stunned. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they stared at Kong Tianxin. They thought that they had heard wrongly. They could not believe what they had just heard. When the Grand Elder regained his senses, he said in a low voice, "Sect leader, how could you be so foolish? We Qianquan sect have our pride and dignity." Before he could finish, Kong Tianxin waved his hand and interrupted him. "Grand Elder, shut up." The Grand Elder's body froze. He glared at Ji Tianxing and gritted his teeth. However, there was nothing he could do. The rest of the elders and deacons were also glaring at Ji Tianxing. They were so angry that they could only suppress their anger. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Both sides could erupt into an even deeper feud at any time. At such a critical juncture, if Qianquan sect did not handle this matter well, they would be severely injured or even destroyed. Kong Tianxin lived up to his name as the sect leader. He was extremely intelligent and shrewd. He took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. With a calm expression, he looked at Ji Tianxing and said respectfully, "Young Master Ji, our disciples have indeed offended you in this matter. I, Kong, would like to apologize to you on behalf of my disciples. However, we have no intention of offending you. There must be some misunderstanding. Please go to the guest hall and rest for a while." This Kong Tianxin is able to endure what others cannot. He is very far-sighted and knows the big picture. He is indeed someone. Ji Tianxing thought to himself. However, he did not show it on his face and nodded. After that, Kong Tianxin sent 2 guards to bring Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku to the guest hall. After the 2 of them left, Kong Tianxin turned to the elders and deacons and said, "All of you, follow me to the secret chamber and explain everything." After that, he led the elders and deacons into the secret chamber on the left side of the meeting hall. The secret chamber was dimly lit and was protected by a powerful formation. There was no need to worry about being eavesdropped on. Kong Tianxin was the first to enter the secret chamber. He sat on a large jade chair and looked at everyone sternly. "What the hell is going on? Tell me everything from the beginning to the end. Not a single word of falsehood." The elders and deacons stood still in the secret chamber. They looked at each other, but no one dared to say anything. After all, most of them only rushed to help after hearing the news. They did not know the cause and details of the incident. Just as the Grand Elder was about to speak, Kong Tianxin glared at him and said, "Grand Elder, you better shut up. You were the last to arrive. There is no way you know the cause of the incident." Kong Tianxin's words made the Grand Elder choke on his words. He was so angry that his face turned red. After a while, a deacon in a black robe stepped forward. He was covered in blood and had a bloody nose and a swollen face. He said timidly, "Faction leader, I was guarding the mountain gate today. I was inside the mountain gate when the incident happened. I saw it with my own eyes." "Then you tell me." Kong Tianxin looked at him sternly and said in a deep voice, "If you dare to lie to me, I will chop off your head." The deacon in a black robe was shocked. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes, I will tell you the truth. 15 minutes ago, Ji Tianxing and the young lady arrived at the mountain gate. They were stopped by the leader of the guards. The young lady asked the leader of the guards to inform you that the territory leader and the princess of the demonic tribe had come to visit. They have something to discuss with you." The guards laughed and did not believe what they said. They mocked them, and even wanted to capture Ji Tianxing and the young lady. They wanted to give them 50 lashes each, and throw them down the mountain. Kong Tianxin frowned when he heard this. He thought to himself, "I knew it." The Grand Elder also realized that something was wrong. However, he did not want to admit defeat. He muttered, "You can't blame the guards. They are just doing their job. They are lowly people, and they have never seen Ji Tianxing. How could they believe what they said? If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Ji Tianxing, since he didn't hand over the invitation and didn't take out the token of a domain lord. Who would believe that he's the domain lord?" Kong Tianxin was so angry that he started to laugh. He pointed at the Grand Elder and scolded, "Bastard! Is your brain kicked by a donkey? Ji Tianxing is the territory leader, the #1 genius of the human race. He is the emperor's son of the demonic tribe. Why would he need to show you the token of the territory leader? Who do you think you are? You are just a bunch of guards. To him, you are just ants. Why would he show you the token of the territory leader? Would you show the token to the ants on the ground? Even if he showed you the territory leader's golden seal, would you be able to recognize it? Have you ever seen the territory leader's golden seal? Can you tell if it is real or fake? The great elder was rendered speechless on the spot. His old face flushed red and turned purple. He was so ashamed that he wished he could find a hole in the ground to hide in. The other elders and deacons had the same thought. Chapter 941. The secret room was completely silent. Everyone lowered their heads in shame, feeling very nervous. Kong Tianxin looked at the black deacon and said in a deep voice, "Continue." The deacon in black continued. After Ji Tianxing and the girl injured the guards of the mountain gate, they rushed through the mountain gate and rushed to the mountain peak. My subordinates, deacons and guards heard the news and rushed to the scene. However, none of them dared to stop them. After that, Elder Li and Elder Kai arrived and stopped Ji Tianxing. Elder Li argued with Ji Tianxing and humiliated Ji Tianxing. After that, he was severely injured by Ji Tianxing and fainted. Kong Tianxin's frown deepened as he ordered, "Repeat what Elder Li and Ji Tianxing said to me." The deacon did not dare to hide anything. He quickly told Kong Tianxing everything that Elder Li and Ji Tianxing said. Kong Tianxing was so angry that she slammed her palm on the jade chair. "Peng! Bastard! What a bastard! Elder Li is such an idiot. He almost caused our sect to be destroyed. He doesn't even know what the name Ji Tianxing means. How dare he put on airs in front of Ji Tianxing? He even insulted him and the girl beside him." Luckily, Elder Li was severely injured by Ji Tianxing and fainted. That allowed Ji Tianxing to vent his anger. Otherwise, I would have punished him as well. Kong Tianxin exuded a chilling aura, and her anger filled the entire secret chamber. Everyone lowered their heads in fear, and no one dared to even breathe loudly. Although the first elder was not happy about it, he did not dare to say anything. The second elder hesitated for a moment before he said, "Faction leader, don't you think it's disappointing for everyone to hear what you said about Elder Li? So what if Ji Tianxing is the realm lord of Tianshan region and a famous emperor's disciple? Our Qingquan sect does not have to lower our heads to him. We can report to the heavenly concubine and ask the Son of Heaven to back us up if he dares to run amok in our sect. Besides, the heavenly concubine can also report this to the emperor. The emperor will definitely punish Ji Tianxing." The other elders and deacons nodded in agreement. "That's right. Second elder is right. Why should we lower our heads to Ji Tianxing? Emperor's disciple is nothing. Is he more honorable than the emperor? So what if Ji Tianxing is the #1 genius of the human race? The emperor's disciple can decide his life and death." Kong Tianxin stared coldly at the elders and deacons. Suddenly, she was so angry that she let out a sneer. "Ha ha ha ha! You bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. Have you been blinded by false reputation? Have you been blinded by lard? The Yong'an region lord is only being polite to us because of the heavenly concubine and the emperor. Do you really think that Ji Tianxing is the same as the Yong'an region lord? You don't even know the situation in Zhong State. You don't even know how high Ji Tianxing's position in the human race is. And Suwen is indeed the heavenly concubine. But you don't even know that the emperor doesn't like her at all. Has the emperor ever come to our sect? Has he ever sent any gifts or letters to our sect? If it weren't for Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, the heavenly concubine would have been locked up in the cold palace. You wouldn't be able to sit here and act so smug." The elders and deacons were dumbfounded when they heard the shocking news. The second elder's expression changed drastically, and his entire old face turned red. Kong Tianxin grinned and continued, "The heavenly concubine is indeed honorable. But even if she saw Ji Tianxing, she has no right to be arrogant. Do you understand? Even the emperor can't punish Ji Tianxing, because he and Ji Tianxing are good friends. Friends of equal status. The emperor doesn't even care about Qingquan sect. But you naively think that the emperor is our son-in-law and will back us up. Not to mention the emperor. Even the emperor himself thought highly of Ji Tianxing. He even personally conferred Ji Tianxing the title of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. No matter what Ji Tianxing did in Zhong State, even if he destroyed the Duanmu family, one of the 3 ancient families, the emperor did not punish him. Even the Duanmu family was destroyed by Ji Tianxing. What is Qingquan sect to him? What right do you have to be so arrogant in front of him? You attacked Ji Tianxing, and he didn't kill you on the spot. That's already very kind of him. Otherwise, do you think you're still alive and complaining to me? Kong Tianxing was agitated. She slammed her palms on the jade chair as she spoke, as if she had expected better from Wuxia. All the elders and deacons were so scared that their faces turned pale. Sweating profusely, they buried their heads in their chests. They did not dare to imagine that Ji Tianxing's status was so high. Ji Tianxing's strength and methods were so powerful that it was terrifying. When they thought about how the Duanmu family was destroyed by Ji Tianxing, they felt a chill run down their spines. They rejoiced in their hearts that they were still alive after provoking Ji Tianxing. Kong Tianxing was so angry that his chest heaved up and down. It took him a long time to calm down. He looked at the crowd sternly and scolded angrily. You bunch of pig brains. You only know how to be arrogant and think that you're the best in the world. You don't respect anyone. How many times have I told you to restrain yourselves? What happened in the end? Now, you've finally met someone that you can't afford to offend. You were beaten up so badly, and now you have to apologize to him with a smile on your face. It's all because of you. If I didn't arrive in time, you would have created a huge mess for me. All the elders and deacons lowered their heads and clenched their fists. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Now that things had come to this, they no longer dared to complain. They were all regretting their actions. After a long time, Kong Tianxing suppressed his anger and said in a cold and serious tone, "What's done is done. This is a painful lesson that I hope you will remember. In the future, all of you better restrain yourselves. Don't let this arrogant and despotic atmosphere continue to spread. I will also do my best to rectify this unhealthy trend. If we don't stop this evil trend in time, sooner or later, our faction will be destroyed." All the elders were remorseful. They quickly saluted Kong Tianxing and said, "Yes, sir." When Kong Tianxing saw that everyone had lowered their heads and admitted their mistakes, his anger dissipated. He said in a dignified tone, "Now all of you follow me to the guest hall. I will bring all of you to see Ji Tianxing. You must show your sincerity and apologize to him in person. I will do my best to deal with this matter properly. Even if I have to sacrifice a lot, I will appease Ji Tianxing's anger. We cannot afford to offend him. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable." Chapter 942. Inside the main hall of Qingquan sect. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku were sitting on the left side of the main hall. They were resting with their eyes closed. On the table beside the two of them, there was a fragrant spiritual tea and exquisite and delicious pastries. However, he did not eat the pastries or drink the tea. Instead, he looked at them coldly and waited for the results. Not long after, a series of heavy footsteps could be heard coming from the entrance of the hall. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku opened their eyes and looked towards the entrance of the grand hall. They saw Kong Tianxing leading 9 elders and more than 20 deacons into the grand hall with their heads lowered. The elders and deacons looked like frosted eggplants. They did not dare to look at Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku's faces. Kong Tianxing stood in front of Ji Tianxing. He held up the teacup with both hands and handed it to Ji Tianxing respectfully. "Young Master Ji, today's matter is indeed a misunderstanding. We can only blame our sect's guards, deacons, and elders for being ignorant frogs at the bottom of a well. They had eyes but failed to see. They did not recognize that you were here in person and offended you. Just now, I have already severely reprimanded them and made them realize their mistakes. I, Kong, represent Qingquan sect and sincerely apologize to you. I hope that you will not hold a grudge against us and forgive us for offending you." With that said, Kong Tianxing handed the tea to Ji Tianxing with both hands. She lowered her head respectfully, as if she was apologizing for her mistake. Ji Tianxing did not take the tea. He looked at Kong Tianxing expressionlessly and said, "Faction leader Kong, you are a person who knows when to stop. You have a bright future ahead of you. However, this is just your attitude. You are representing all the elders and deacons of Qingquan sect. They might not be convinced. All the elders of your sect are so arrogant that they can even ask you to leave on your behalf. Kong Tianxin was smart enough to understand what Ji Tianxing was trying to say before he could finish his sentence. Kong Tianxin turned around and looked at the elders and deacons behind him. He shouted, "You bunch of bastards! What are you waiting for? Why aren't you kneeling and admitting your guilt? Kneel down and confess." All the elders and deacons were stunned for a moment. Their faces became very ugly, and their hearts were filled with hesitation. However, Kong Tianxin's face darkened, and a domineering aura burst out from his body as he shouted, "Kneel!" All the elders and deacons suddenly trembled, intimidated by his majesty. They all knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Ji Tianxing, begging for forgiveness. "We were blind and offended, young Master Ji. Please forgive us, young Master Ji. We failed to recognize a prodigy and offended young Master Ji. We hereby kowtow and apologize to young Master Ji. We hope that young Master Ji will forgive us. We are bastards. We are frogs in a well. We shouldn't have offended young Master Ji. Please forgive us." 9 elders and over 20 deacons knelt on the ground, kowtowing in fear and trepidation while begging for forgiveness. The hall was instantly filled with clamor. A group of people covered in blood, with bruises all over their faces, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing was a comical sight. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing reached out and took a sip of the spirit tea that Kong Tianxin was holding. "All right, let them all leave. I have something important to tell you." Hearing this, Kong Tianxin let out a sigh of relief. He quickly bowed and said, "Thank you for your magnanimity, young Master Ji. I can't thank you enough." After that, he waved his hand at the elders and deacons, indicating that they should leave. As if they had been pardoned, they quickly stood up and left the hall. After a while, only Ji Tianxing, Ji Ku and Kong Tianxin were left in the hall. At this time, Kong Tianxin asked tentatively, "Young Master Ji, how may I help you?" Ji Tianxing didn't beat around the bush and said directly, "Sect Master Kong. What I want to tell you is related to the Shenhui sect. More than 100 years ago, the Green Mountain sect raised a flood dragon and had the heavenly prayer mirror. As a result, they were attacked by the Green Mountain sect and the other 3 major forces. The Shenhui sect was besieged by the 4 major forces. After a fierce battle, the heavenly prayer mirror was detonated. The 5 major sects were severely damaged, and their strength was greatly damaged. The flood dragon was taken away by Elder Ji of the Shenhui sect, but the dragon crystal was taken away by another group of experts. After many investigations, I finally found out that the dragon crystal is in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect." At this point, Ji Tianxing looked at Kong Tianxin with a deep and sharp gaze. He didn't say anything else. In fact, he only guessed that the dragon crystal was in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect. He didn't have any clues or evidence. He said this on purpose to test Kong Tianxin. Kong Tianxin was taken aback. His expression changed slightly, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He frowned. After a moment of hesitation, he asked cautiously, "Young Master Ji, did you come to the Heaven and Earth sect for that dragon crystal?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianxing was secretly pleased. It seems that I guessed right. The dragon crystal is in the hands of the Heaven and Earth sect." Kong Tianxin heard that I had investigated it thoroughly. Seeing my confident tone, he didn't dare to hide the truth. His expression didn't change. He nodded calmly and said, "That's right. I came for the dragon crystal." Kong Tianxin furrowed his brows, showing a hesitant expression. "Young Master Ji, to tell you the truth, the dragon crystal did fall into the hands of our sect after a few rounds. However, the last sect master of our sect was a grandmaster in crafting magic tools. He used the dragon crystal as the core to craft a top-notch magic tool of the heavenly origin state." Ji Tianxing also furrowed his brows. "Is the dragon crystal in good condition? It hasn't been melted down, right?" Kong Tianxin shook his head. "No, but the dragon crystal is the core of the magic tool." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "As long as the dragon crystal is in good condition, it's fine. Go and get the magic tool." Kong Tianxin put on a troubled expression. "Young Master Ji, that magic tool is the Ice Dragon Compass. It is very important to our sect. It is used to gather spiritual veins. If we lose this magic tool, or the dragon crystal, our spiritual veins will be affected. Ji Tianxing didn't waste any more time. He took out 2 magic tools from his infinite space ring and slammed them on the table. I only want the dragon crystal. I'll give you these 2 magic tools as compensation. Is that enough? The 2 magic tools he took out were a top-notch heavenly origin sword and a heavenly gold compass. He had more than 100 magic tools in his infinite space ring. These were all low-grade items that he had no use for. However, to the Heaven and Earth sect, a magic tool was a priceless treasure. It was extremely rare. Kong Tianxin was stunned on the spot. Her eyes were fixed on the 2 instruments, and her heart was filled with shock. Chapter 943. Kong Tianxin was smart. He would not offend Ji Tianxing or harm Qingkuan sect. He knew that Ji Tianxing was determined to get the dragon crystal. Even if he did not hand over the dragon crystal, Ji Tianxing would snatch it from him. By then, Qingkuan sect would have no choice but to swallow their grievances. If that was the case, they might as well hand over the dragon crystal and get some compensation. Losing a dragon crystal in exchange for 2 dermic instruments was definitely a good deal. 15 minutes later, Kong Tianxin returned to the guest hall with an ice blue dermic instrument compass. Young Master Ji, the ice dragon compass is here. Kong Tianxin walked up to Ji Tianxing and presented the compass to him. Ji Tianxing took a closer look and saw that it was an ice blue dermic instrument the size of 2 palms. It was made of exquisite materials. There were 3 dragons carved on the edge of the compass, and they formed a circle around the compass. They were very lifelike and lively. The front and back of the compass were engraved with array Dao runes and mysterious symbols. In the middle of the compass was a black crystal the size of a walnut. The crystal was in the shape of a hexagon. It shone with a black light and gave off a chilling aura. Clearly this black crystal was the dragon crystal. Ji Tianxing took the ice dragon compass and used his array Dao skills. He shot out 10 rays of golden light into the compass. He waved his hands and made a series of hand seals to dismantle the array on the compass. After a short span of a few dozen breaths, the compass emitted a crisp cracking sound, and dense cracks appeared on it. In the blink of an eye, the exquisite ice dragon compass was reduced to a pile of debris. The black dragon crystal fell to the ground, and Ji Tianxing grabbed it. A top-tier ethereal dermic instrument was reduced to pieces just like that. Kong Tianxin was dumbfounded. Her eyes were wide open, filled with shock and disbelief. Oh my God! Back then, the previous sect leader had spent 3 months and used up invaluable materials to refine this magic tool. Ji Tianxing actually used only a few dozen breaths to break the ice dragon compass into pieces? His strength, his methods, are actually so powerful? Kong Tianxin was both shocked and distressed. She felt even more respect for Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing put away the dragon crystal and got up to bid him farewell. Sect leader Kong, the dragon crystal belongs to me, and the 2 magical artifacts belong to you. This matter is settled. Goodbye. After saying that, he stood up with Ji Ku and walked towards the entrance of the main hall. Kong Tianxin didn't expect him to be so swift and decisive. Without the slightest hesitation, he hurriedly caught up with him and respectfully said, "Young Master Ji, you've come from afar. Why don't you stay in our sect for a few days so that I can take care of you and apologize?" "No need. I still have things to do." Ji Tianxing walked out of the hall without looking back, waving his hand to refuse. Kong Tianxin nodded and did not try to persuade him to stay. He personally escorted Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku out of the main hall and watched them fly into the sky. It was not until the 2 of them disappeared into the horizon that he could finally relax. A bitter smile appeared on his face. "I didn't expect Ji Tianxing to come to our sect personally for such a small matter. And it was settled so easily. It's all because of those guards and elders. They were so blind to have caused such a mess for no reason. They were asking for trouble." Kong Tianxin's mood was very complicated. He sighed silently and turned to leave. He returned to the main hall with a dark face and gathered the elders and deacons. He began a series of discussions, and announced a series of orders. In the past, the disciples, elders, and deacons were arrogant and domineering. Kong Tianxin had tried to discipline and teach them many times, but they did not change. After this incident, Kong Tianxin decided to learn from it and rectify the evil in the sect. He would not let the same thing happen again. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke rode on Qianyu and traveled at lightning speed in the sky. Ji Ke recalled what had happened before, and she couldn't help but smile. Brother Tianxing, that was so satisfying. Those arrogant idiots from Qiankuan sect were so arrogant just a moment ago, but after being scolded by their patriarch, they all cried and begged for mercy. Every time I think of their pitiful faces, I can't help but laugh. Hee. Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. He said calmly, "They are just a bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. After this lesson they should know better." After that, he took out the black dragon crystal from his infinite space ring and summoned the little black dragon. "Little black dragon, I've finally found the dragon crystal that you've been dreaming of." Hearing this, the little black dragon was overjoyed. With a swoosh, it grew to 3 meters long and circled behind Ji Tianxing. The little black dragon stared at the black dragon crystal and said excitedly, "Old Ji, you're amazing. I've lost my dragon crystal for more than 100 years. I thought that I would never be able to get it back. I didn't expect that you would only use a few days and a little trick to get it back. Old Ji, thank you so much." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "Actually, I didn't expect things to go so smoothly either. At first, I thought that the dragon crystal was in the hands of Qiankuan sect. I didn't expect that after what happened, Kong Tianxin would be intimidated by me." His attitude was very respectful, and he was also mentally prepared to apologize and make peace with the matter. I was just trying to trick him, and he didn't dare to hide the truth from me. That's how I got the dragon crystal. Qianyu laughed. "Ha ha ha. That's why I said that strength is the most important thing." Old Ji's strength, status, and dominance shocked Kong Tianxin and made him hand over the dragon crystal obediently. If it were anyone else, Kong Tianxin would not have given up the dragon crystal so easily. Ji Tianxing smiled and stopped talking about this topic. He handed the dragon crystal to the little black dragon and said, "Little black dragon, your dragon crystal has been lost for more than 100 years and was refined into a magic weapon. Although the dragon crystal has been nourished by the magic weapon, it has become very powerful. However, after you retrieve the dragon crystal, you have to remove the impurities in the dragon crystal and refine it carefully." "Alright, I understand." The little black dragon hurriedly nodded before swallowing the dragon crystal in an impatient manner. After the dragon crystal fell into its stomach, it quickly drilled into its head and steadily fell into its brain. "Old Ji, I'm going to sleep and cultivate to refine the dragon crystal." It greeted Ji Tianxing and went back into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to sleep and refine the dragon crystal. It had been stuck at the 9th level of the origin core stage for a long time. Now that it had found the dragon crystal, it had obtained a powerful boost, and its body was complete. Chapter 944. After that, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke continued their journey. As time passed, Qianyu carried them across mountains and rivers. They passed through half of the southern continent and approached the great swamp of the southern wilderness. During their journey, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke had nothing to do. They could only meditate and cultivate. Fortunately, the southern continent had always been peaceful. They did not encounter any danger during their journey. They were safe and sound. Unknowingly, 2 months had passed. In these 2 months, Ji Tianxing had been sharpening his heart and fusing with the sword embryo. Heaven did not disappoint those who worked hard. On the evening of the 61st day, he finally fused the sword embryo with his heart and successfully cultivated the heart of the sword. At the same time, his strength had reached the 9th level of the heavenly origin stage. The path of the heart of the sword was completed. His heart and the sword embryo had fused together and turned into a golden sword that floated above his heart. From now on, the heart of the sword was the source of his strength and also his life. Even if his physical body was destroyed, as long as his heart of the sword was not broken and his soul was not extinguished, he would not die. Moreover, his physical body had become stronger. His strength, speed, and defensive ability had more than doubled. The moment the divine skill was completed, Ji Tianxing's body surged with golden light and emitted an invisible sword intent that seemed to be able to pierce the sky. This is great! Since I obtained Kenshin's tomb and started cultivating the path of the heart of the sword, 2 years have passed. I have finally cultivated the path of the heart of the sword. Next, I have to continue sharpening my heart of the sword and accumulate strength to break through to the soul tempering stage. Only when I reach the soul tempering stage can I be considered an extraordinary expert. Only then can I roam the Tianxian continent and have the hope of saving Yao Yao. Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and murmured in his heart. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Ji Ku, who was sitting not far behind him, was also awakened by the sword intent that was emitting from his body. She stared at Ji Tianxing curiously for a while, then asked tentatively, "Big brother Tianxing, did you just break through?" Ji Tianxing looked at her and nodded with a smile. "That's right. I have been stuck at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage for 4 months. I have finally mastered the martial art and reached the 9th level." Ji Ku was shocked. He smiled excitedly and said, "That's great. Congratulations, big brother Tianxing. You're one step closer to the soul refinement realm. Brother Tianxing, with your current strength, you're definitely the #1 imperial prince in the imperial palace." The prince of the Water Clan had reached the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage a long time ago. He was recognized as the most powerful prince in the world. But in my opinion, he's definitely no match for you. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded, tacitly agreeing with this statement. The southern wasteland city is just up ahead. That ancient city was the closest city to the southern wasteland Great Swamp. 300 miles south of the southern wasteland city is the southern wasteland Great Swamp. Ji Ku suddenly showed an expression of relief and said with relief, "Great, we've been on the road for 2 months, and we're finally here." Qianyu was also excited. "Ha ha ha, we're finally there. I haven't rested for 2 months. I'm so tired. However, traveling for 2 months has actually stimulated my potential and endurance. I'm one step closer to the Sky Origin stage. Old G, I feel like I'll be able to break through to the Sky Origin stage in a few days." For the past 2 months, Qianyu had been flying without rest or sleep. This was the longest time it had ever spent on a journey. It had long since exhausted itself, and was very lethargic. However, it was also a good training for its strength and endurance. It had benefited it a lot. Ji Ku looked tired and said, "Brother Tianxing, when we arrive at the southern wasteland city, we must rest for a few days in the city. We'll enter the southern wasteland Great Swamp after we've rested." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I have the same idea. After we enter the southern wasteland city, not only will we have to rest, I'll also ask for information in the city to deepen our understanding of the southern wasteland Great Swamp." Although he had read many books in the central state and had a certain understanding of the southern wasteland Great Swamp, but the information was from many years ago, and the amount of information was too little. He had to know more information. It would be best if he could get a map of the southern wasteland Great Swamp. Soon, a huge shadow appeared on the ground in front of them. It was an ancient and majestic city, with a radius of 100 miles. It was located on a vast yellow grassland. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the ancient city was covered with a layer of hazy golden light. It looked very mysterious. As Qianyu rapidly approached, Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku looked up and finally saw the appearance of the city. Huge dark brown rocks were piled up to form a huge city wall that was 10 feet high. On the city wall, there was a tower every 100 meters. A group of city guards was stationed in each tower, and they had set up huge magical ballistic cannons. At the foot of the 30-meter-tall city gate, there were over 100 black armored city guards standing guard. These city guards were all elite soldiers. They wore red tasseled helmets, had blades at their waists, and held spears in their hands. Their whole body emitted an iron-blooded murderous aura. There were not many people going in and out of the city gate. They lined up in an orderly manner, waiting to be checked. Seeing this scene, Ji Ku asked Ji Tianxing with some doubts, "Brother Tianxing, Is that the southern wasteland city? It seems that the city is heavily guarded, as if there's going to be a war. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and explained. This place is under the rule of the Heaven Wasteland Empire. It's been peaceful for many years, and there won't be a war. However, 300 miles south of the city is the Southern Wasteland Swamp. It's said that there will often be beast tides in the Southern Wasteland Swamp. There are tens of thousands of ferocious demonic beasts that rush out in groups and besiege the Southern Wasteland City. Therefore, the Southern Wasteland City has always been heavily guarded, guarding against the attacks of beast tides at any time. Beast tide? Ji Ke frowned in puzzlement, feeling that this term was novel. Ji Tianqing explained. Tens of thousands of ferocious beasts and demonic beasts, rushing out of the Southern Wasteland Swamp and wreaking havoc in the Southern Wasteland City. Wouldn't it be like a tide? However, I've only seen this term in books, and have never seen a beast tide. Ji Ke nodded as if he understood and muttered with a smile. I hope we're not so unlucky, and don't encounter any beast tides. As the two talked, they soon arrived outside the city gate of the Southern Wasteland City. Qianyu descended from the sky. Ji Tianqing kept it in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, and let it have a good rest. Then, Ji Tianqing took Ji Ke and walked towards the city gate of the Southern Wasteland City. The two followed behind the crowd of people and waited for about half a quarter of an hour before they were checked by the city guards. They paid the entrance fee of 4 spirit stones before they were allowed to enter the city. After entering the city, the two walked along the wide and ancient black flagstone street, heading towards the center of the city. Chapter 945. The style of the Southern Wasteland City was completely different from that of the center state. Most of the houses and buildings in the center state were exquisite and gorgeous, revealing a solemn and refined aura. Most of the palaces and buildings in the Southern Wasteland City were rough in appearance, with ancient and strange shapes, revealing a trace of wild and unruly temperament. Even the clothes of the civilians in the city were mostly made from the furs of beasts. Many men were wearing boots and shorts made of animal skin, short coats and waistcoats made of animal skin. Around their necks and wrists, there were also bead chains made of animal bones and animal teeth. The number of warriors in the Southern Wasteland City was obviously more than that of ordinary cities. Not only were most of the men carrying swords and sabers, but even the seemingly charming women were also carrying swords or short sabers on their backs. Ji Tianqing strolled in the city for half an hour, using his soul sense to monitor the surrounding movements, listening to the conversations of the people, and silently collecting information. He gradually understood that the Southern Wasteland City was not only populated by local people, but also many warriors from all over the world. Most of these warriors were rangers and adventurers, who wanted to explore the Southern Wasteland Swamp to look for treasures, or to hunt demon beasts and collect elixirs. Although the Southern Wasteland Swamp was very dangerous, danger often coexisted with opportunity. There were many ancient relics in the Southern Wasteland Swamp, which hid the cave residences of the predecessors, or some secret treasures. In addition, there were many ferocious beasts, spiritual flowers, rare herbs, and mineral resources. If one could obtain these things, they could be exchanged for spirit stones and cultivation resources. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke strolled around the city twice, and had a general understanding of the Southern Wasteland City. Then, they found an inn in the city, and temporarily stayed there. This inn was located in the center of the city, and was built in a very luxurious style. Not only did it have a palace, but it also had a spacious courtyard. There were hundreds of guests in the inn, most of whom were adventurers from all over the world. Most of these adventurers were traveling in groups, and they were quite cautious in their actions and words. After Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke checked in, they rested in their respective rooms, silently meditating to restore their strength. The night passed quickly. The next morning, Ji Tianqing's mental state had recovered a lot. He ended his meditation and walked out of the room. He went downstairs to the lobby on the first floor, and saw that it was empty. There were only a few workers wiping the tables and chairs. A middle-aged man wearing a square scarf hat and a short coat made of animal skin was sitting at the counter, dozing off. The white-haired man was the innkeeper of the inn. Ji Tianxing walked to the front of the counter and asked, "Shopkeeper, do you know who is the most well-informed person in the southern wasteland city? I want to get some information." The shopkeeper opened his sleepy eyes and glanced at him. Slowly he said, "What information? If you have any information about the great swamp of the southern wasteland, you can look for Mr. Hu." "Mr. Hu? Where should I go to find him?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. The shopkeeper said with a smile, "Mr. Hu lives in the Four Quarters house. You can go there to find him. He is a well-known know-it-all in the city, and he is especially knowledgeable about the great swamp of the southern wasteland. However, the number of people who want to find him for information is as many as the carps crossing the river. Young master, you'd better prepare a generous gift to get what you want." "Thank you." Ji Tianxing nodded. 2 spirit stones appeared in his palm out of thin air, and he put them on the counter. The shopkeeper's smile became more and more brilliant. He put away the spirit stones with a smile and added, "Mr. Hu and I are old friends. Young master, after you go there, you can report my name as shopkeeper Niu. It will save you a lot of time waiting in line." "I have to wait in line to get information? Are there really so many people looking for him?" Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and muttered in his heart. But he didn't say anything. He nodded to shopkeeper Niu and turned around to leave the lobby. He casually asked around on the street and found out the address of the Four Quarters house. He then rushed over as fast as the wind. Half an hour later, he passed through a clean and tidy street. He walked to the end of the street and arrived in front of the gate of a courtyard. The courtyard wasn't big, but it was dignified and grand. There were stone sculptures of a qilin and a lion on both sides of the gate. It was very imposing. There was a red sandalwood signboard above the gate frame. The words Four Quarters House were written in dark gold. It had a bit of an ancient charm, for tall and sturdy bodyguards were guarding the gate. They had treasured sabers hanging from their waists, and their bodies emitted a valiant aura. Ji Tianxing stepped through the gate and entered the courtyard. He saw more than 10 martial artists in a line, waiting in front of the lobby. The lobby's gate was tightly shut. It was obvious that Mr. Hu hadn't arrived yet and hadn't started accepting business. Ji Tianxing naturally wouldn't line up. He found a servant in the courtyard and told him that he was introduced by shopkeeper Niu. The servant immediately understood and led him away from the side door. They entered the courtyard behind the lobby. The backyard wasn't big, but it was clean and secluded. There was a 30-zhang-tall parasol tree in the courtyard. Its lush branches and leaves almost covered the entire courtyard. There was a stone table and a few stone stools under the tree. A white-bearded and white-haired old man in a blue robe sat there, leisurely sipping tea. The blue-robed old man had a thin figure. He had a goatee on his chin and a pair of eyes as sharp as a hawk's. The servant led Ji Tianxing to the tree and bowed to the blue-robed old man. "Master, this young master is a guest introduced by shopkeeper Niu." After saying that, the servant introduced him to Ji Tianxing. "Young master, this is our master, Mr. Hu." Ji Tianxing nodded at Big Mr. Hu as a form of greeting. Mr. Hu pointed to the stone stools in front of him and smiled. "Young master, please sit." Ji Tianxing didn't stand on ceremony and sat down on the stone stools opposite him. Mr. Hu waved his hand and indicated for the servant to withdraw. Then he poured a cup of spirit tea for Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing took a sip of the spirit tea and said, "Mr. Hu, I want to inquire about the southern wasteland Great Lake." Mr. Hu stroked his beard and smiled. "Young master, this old man sees that you have an extraordinary appearance and are in high spirits. You must be a dragon among men. If this old man didn't guess incorrectly, young master should want to enter the southern wasteland Great Lake to explore the ruins of the cave and find the lost secret treasure, right?" Seeing that Ji Tianxing didn't deny it, he continued, "Young master, this old man has an unwritten rule here. I hope you can understand. Young master, please take out the price you are willing to pay. 100 or 300 spirit stones are fine. Place them on the stone table. If young master has any doubts, just ask this old man. Every time this old man answers a question, I will collect the corresponding spirit stones. Hearing Mr. Hu's words, Ji Tianqing's expression didn't change. However, in his heart, he was secretly cursing. This old fox is really cunning. There are clearly people lining up in the front yard to ask for information, but he avoided meeting them. It's most likely because he dislikes those people for not being able to pay a high price. Otherwise, those people lining up are all fake. They are all people that Mr. Hu found to pretend to be people to show his ability. When he meets a seemingly generous person like me, he opens his mouth like a lion and wants to rip me off. Chapter 946. Ji Tianqing didn't have a good impression of Mr. Hu, so he was on guard against him. But he didn't show it on his face. He took out 500 spirit stones from his interspatial ring and put them on the stone table. Mr. Hu's pupils suddenly dilated, and a bright light flashed in his eyes. His heartbeat also sped up a bit. Obviously, Ji Tianqing's extravagance was beyond his expectations, making him quite moved. If he didn't have to maintain the image of an expert, he would have already reached out his hand to touch that pile of sparkling spirit stones. Cough, cough. He pretended to cough twice, and said with a calm face, as if he didn't care about money. Young master, it seems like this is your first time coming to the Southern Wasteland City. You shouldn't have entered the Southern Wasteland Great Lake, right? Since that's the case, this old man will tell you in detail about the Southern Wasteland Great Lake. Listen carefully. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly nodded and calmly looked at him. Mr. Hu stroked his beard and slowly explained. The Southern Wasteland Great Lake is located in the southernmost part of the southern continent. According to legend, it is a land abandoned by the gods. Although the land there is vast and boundless, it has mountains and rivers. But for us humans, it is a forbidden zone for life. It is impossible to establish a foothold or survive in there. Therefore, no matter how powerful a kingdom is, they don't dare to step into the Southern Wasteland Great Lake, and they don't even dare to build a city there. The terrain of the Southern Wasteland Great Lake is quite unique. It is like a huge crater with a radius of 1,000,000 miles, as if it was punched by the gods. The surrounding terrain is relatively high, and most of it is mountain ranges and forests. But the closer you go to the center of the lake, the lower the terrain becomes. There are very few mountain ranges and most of it is grassland, rivers, and lakes. There are also endless swamps. In the entire Southern Wasteland Great Lake, 60 to 70% of the area is swamps and quagmires. That is the most dangerous area in the Great Lake. Not only do the most powerful beasts and monsters lurk there, but there are also all kinds of rare poisonous snakes, ants, and insects that are invisible and tasteless. If young master enters the Great Lake, you must be careful and advance step by step. Even if some of the seemingly safe mountain peaks and forests, there are hidden dangers that can even endanger your life. As for the swamp area in the center of the Great Swamp, I advise young master not to go near it. Although most of the legendary experts' cave residences and relics were in that area, it was impossible for them to escape. However, even if one is a transcendent expert, it is very likely that he will lose his life after entering. Big Mr. Hu explained with a serious expression, and spoke for a full half an hour. After saying that, he said with a solemn expression, "Young master, the information that I just told you is very confidential and precious. Ordinary people don't know about it at all. As long as you remember this old man's words, you can avoid many dangers. This is information that can save your life. This old man won't take too many spirit stones from you. I'll only take 50 spirit stones as a small reward." After saying that, he reached out to take the spirit stones on the stone table. However, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and raised his right hand to press down on his arm. "Haha, Mr. Hu, what you just said is not a secret at all. Before I came to the Southern Wasteland City, I had already heard about it." Big Mr. Hu only had the strength of the Yuan Dan stage. With 2 fingers on his arm, he was instantly unable to move. He frowned, looking at Ji Tianqing with some displeasure, asking, "Young master, your words are a little biased. The information that I said was obtained from the mouths of the adventurers who have entered the great swamp of the Southern Wasteland. This information was exchanged with the lives and blood of countless martial artists. You have never entered the great swamp of the southern wasteland. How could you know this information? A confident smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face as he slowly said, "As the saying goes, read 10,000 books, travel 10,000 miles. Although I have never entered the great swamp of the southern wasteland, but I have read 10,000 books, and have some understanding of the great swamp of the southern wasteland. The information that you just said is clearly recorded in miscellaneous records of the clear breeze, Lu Gong's records of the southern wasteland, sights and news of the southern wasteland, and a brief history of the heaven wasteland." Big Mister, who was taken aback for a moment, staring at him with wide eyes, asking in bewilderment, "There are these books? Apart from a brief history of the heaven wasteland, the books that you mentioned, why have I not heard of any of them?" Ji Tianqing chuckled. "I forgot to tell you. I come from an ancient family in the central continent. There are millions of books in my residence, and most of them are the only copies in the world." "What? Are you doubting me? Do you want me to repeat the passages and contents of those books for you?" Big Mister, whose body stiffened. Then he quickly squeezed out a smile. "No, of course not." "Then let's continue." Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile. Big Mister, who was bitter and vexed, but on the surface he had to maintain his demeanor. He reluctantly withdrew his hand, nodding. "Fine, then let me ask, young master, what are you looking for? Or perhaps, you are looking for the remains of a cave?" Ji Tianqing said with an expressionless face, "I am looking for a treasure. It is a broken sword that fell into the swamp of the southern wastelands 1,000 years ago." "Does Big Mister who have any news about it?" Big Mister who frowned, his face full of doubt. "A broken sword that fell into the swamp of the southern wastelands 1,000 years ago? This is novel. This is the first time I have heard of this. In the past 1,000 years, the number of martial artists that have ventured into the swamp is more than tens of millions. If that broken sword was a divine weapon, it would have been taken away long ago." Ji Tianqing nodded, then continued to ask, "Then does Big Mister who know which places in the swamp are more strange? Or perhaps strange things have happened somewhere, and rare phenomena have appeared?" Big Mister who frowned and thought for a long time, then said with a serious face, "According to what I know, in the mountains and forests at the border, there are dozens of famous areas. Among those dozens of places, there were only 3 that had strange occurrences and strange occurrences. One is the evil dragon pool, another is the colorful forest, and the last one is the carefree mountain. The evil dragon pool is a deep pool surrounded by mountains. It is said that the pool is unfathomably deep, and there is an evil dragon hiding in it. Every few years, it will summon the wind and rain, stirring up chaos within 1,000 miles. The colorful forest is a misty forest. It is shrouded in colorful poisonous fog all year round, and outsiders are not allowed to enter. It is said that 300 years ago, there was a strong martial artist who broke into the colorful forest and saw a group of strange people living there. Some of those strange people looked like butterflies, some like moths, and some like wasps. No one knew what race they were. As for the carefree mountain, it was a lonely giant peak. It stood among the mountains, but it appeared and disappeared from time to time. Normal martial artists would not be able to detect it. Moreover, the mountain was very strange. It often changed its position. Last year it was in the east, this year it was in the south, and next year it appeared thousands of miles away in the north. It is said that on the carefree mountain, there lived a group of carefree spirits. They were very smart and had powerful magic power. Chapter 947. After listening to Mr. Hu's explanation, Ji Tianqing was both puzzled and intrigued. He silently memorized the names Evil Dragon Pool, Colorful Forest, and Carefree Mountain. After frowning and pondering for a moment, he asked Mr. Hu, "So, the southern wasteland swamp is not inhabited by humans, but by other races?" Mr. Hu shook his head and explained, "Actually, it's not that there are no humans in the southern wasteland swamp. It's just that ordinary humans can't live there. Rumor has it that there are some ancient powers hidden in the depths of the swamp. They are very mysterious and powerful, but they never appear in front of ordinary people, so they are unknown. However, if you ask me which ancient powers there are, I can't name a single one. After all, those mysterious and ancient powers are not something I can come into contact with. Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood, and asked Mr. Hu a few more questions. Among these questions, Mr. Hu could only answer 2 of them, and couldn't answer the rest. Therefore, Ji Tianxing didn't ask any more questions, and put the spirit stones on the stone table back into the space ring. He only left 50 spirit stones as Mr. Hu's reward. Mr. Hu, you only answered 2 of my questions, so I can only give you 50 spirit stones. Mr. Hu's body suddenly stiffened, and his expression was somewhat unsightly. Originally, when he saw Ji Tianxing's extraordinary speech and high spirits, he thought that he was a rich and wealthy young master. When he saw Ji Tianxing take out 500 spirit stones, he was so excited that his blood was boiling. He only wanted to take all the spirit stones in his pocket, and not let a single one go. However, he didn't expect that Ji Tianxing wasn't so easy to fool. Not only did he turn the tables on him, but he also took back all the spirit stones, leaving only 50 for him. That feeling was like a cooked duck that had flown away, and the money that was in his wallet had been taken back. He was so angry in his heart that his face turned a little green. Young master, this is against the rules. My 4-direction house oversees the southern wasteland city, and it collects information from all over. Who knows how many heroes have begged me to inquire about information? Aren't you belittling the 4-direction house and me by doing this? In any case, 50 spirit stones is absolutely not enough. Any question that I answer is worth more than that. You think it's too little? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a playful smile. With a wave of his hand, he swept up the 50 spiritual stones on the stone table, and put them into his space ring. Then there's none left. With that, he turned to leave. Mr. Hu was stunned for a moment before he flew into a rage. His face was ashen as he shouted, "How dare you? Brat, you're simply going too far." Ji Tianxing's face darkened. He stared at him coldly and said in a cold voice, "Mr. Hu, do you know that trouble comes from careless talk? If you dare to act presumptuously again, I guarantee that you and your 4-direction house will be obliterated." As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand. A golden light flashed in his palm, and a terrifying devouring power erupted. Shwa! Before Big Mr. Hu could react, he was sucked in. Ji Tianxing's big hand grabbed his neck, and said in a cold voice, "You and shopkeeper Niu are colluding to cheat others. Do you really think I can't tell? I'm in a good mood today, so I won't argue with you. If you dare to pester me again, I'll break your neck. Don't think that you can bargain with me, just because you're a local in the southern wasteland city. You're not worthy. Even if the governor of the southern wasteland city came, he would have to kneel in front of me." With that, he let go of his hand, and threw Big Mr. Hu back under the tree. Big Mr. Hu fell on the stone table with a plop, and then fell to the ground in a sorry state. He was filled with anger and humiliation. His face was ashen, and his whole body was trembling. However, his heart was filled with fear. He could only suppress his anger, and did not dare to act up. Damn it! I've met a tough nut today. This brat has the strength of the Sky Origin stage, and is from the Central Plains. He dares to be so arrogant, and not even take the governor seriously. He must have a powerful background, forget it. It's unwise to become enemies with this person for a few hundred spirit stones. Thinking of this, Big Mr. Hu could only suppress his anger, and watch Ji Tianxing leave. Encountering such a person that he could not afford to offend, he could only swallow his anger. After Ji Tianxing left the 4-direction house, he strolled around the city. He spent 5,000 spirit stones to buy a few bottles of antidote elixirs, as well as a topographic map of the southern wasteland Great Swamp. Of course, this was only a simple topographic map. It roughly marked the topography of the southern wasteland Great Swamp, as well as the dozens of well-known places. As for the areas between the various areas, most of them were blank. There were only a few lines and descriptions, indicating mountain ranges or rivers. In general, this map was very rough and abstract. It was not specific and detailed enough, but it was better than nothing. After buying the antidote elixirs and the map, Ji Tianqing returned to the tavern. Jiku had been waiting for him in the tavern. When he saw that he had returned, he quickly went to his room and inquired about the news. Big brother Tianqing, have you inquired about the news? Ji Tianqing nodded and said, I have some clues. Big brother Tianqing, do you know where to go? Did you get a map of the southern wasteland Great Swamp? Ji Tianqing nodded again and said, there are 3 locations. They are the Evil Dragon Pool, the Colorful Forest, and the Carefree Mountain. I can't be sure which one is the problem, so I can only investigate them one by one. As for the map, I only bought a simple one, which cost me 200 spirit stones. This is the most detailed and accurate map that can be obtained by the major shops in the city. I'm afraid that there is no detailed map of the southern wasteland city. After all, very few people can come out alive after entering the depths of the Great Swamp. Jiku revealed a dignified expression and said, Big brother Tianqing, I heard other adventurers discussing the southern wasteland Great Swamp when I was in the tavern. Many people have entered the southern wasteland Great Swamp and have rich experience in exploring. They have also obtained many treasures. They will travel in groups of 3 to 5, helping each other to avoid the dangers and smoothly enter and exit the Great Swamp. Moreover, many people will go to the mercenary tower in the city to recruit people or join other adventurer groups. Big brother Tianqing, we have never entered the southern wasteland Great Swamp, so we have neither experience nor people to help us. Why don't we go to the mercenary tower and recruit some people? If you can bring a few suitable people with you, you don't have to do everything by yourself. Maybe you can find that divine sword faster. After listening to Jiku's words, Ji Tianqing thought for a while and nodded in agreement. That's good. Recruiting a few capable people can indeed save us a lot of trouble. In that case, let's go to the mercenary tower and have a look. Okay. Jiku nodded with a smile and quickly followed him out of the tavern. Chapter 948. The mercenary tower was located on a street in the south of the city. It was always bustling with people coming and going. It was a 4-story palace with a rough and unrestrained appearance. There was a huge symbol of a sword and shield on the roof. Outside the entrance of the first floor, there were 2 rows of lifelike grayish-white statues on the left and right. They were the statues of the mercenary tower's previous leaders. 18 guards in black armor stood on both sides of the entrance with murderous auras. They had swords hanging from their waists. Several groups of adventurers and mercenaries with swords stood in the open space outside the entrance. They were whispering to each other about something. In the spacious hall, there were over 100 martial artists gathered in groups of 3 to 5. Some people were whispering to each other, some were arguing emotionally, and some were yelling loudly to recruit new members. Ji Tianqing and Jiku rushed to the mercenary tower. As soon as they reached the entrance of the hall, several groups of martial artists stared at them. Their eyes shone brightly. As soon as the 2 of them stepped into the hall, the groups of martial artists immediately surrounded them and blocked their way. A burly man raised his chin at Ji Tianqing and asked, Brother, are you here to issue a mission? Or are you looking for a team? From another group of martial artists, a skinny young martial artist immediately walked out and said with a smile, Brother, if you want to explore the Great Swamp, you can't do it alone. Moreover, you have such a delicate little beauty with you. How dangerous is it in the Great Swamp? Quickly join our Bloodknife Adventurer team. As soon as the skinny young man finished speaking, another burly man with a full beard squeezed out of the crowd and said to Ji Tianqing boldly, Little brother, our Devouring Dragon Adventurer team has entered the Great Swamp 12 times. We have rich adventure experience and are famous in the entire southern wasteland city. In addition to these 3 people, there were 2 other martial artists with murderous auras. They also favored Ji Tianqing and invited him to join. Ji Tianqing's eyes swept across the crowd calmly. He said expressionlessly, You are too weak. Get out of my way. Most of these martial artists were at the Mystic Comprehending Realm. Only a few leaders were at the Origin Core Realm. In Ji Tianqing's eyes, these people were so weak that they could not even withstand a single blow. They were not even qualified to be his servants. Although he was speaking the truth, when the crowd heard his words, they immediately frowned and showed displeased expressions. The other martial artists around the hall suddenly quieted down. And you? Since you are so arrogant, then I, Ma Dahou, will have to see how capable you are. He only wanted to knock down Ji Tianqing with one punch. He wanted to show off in front of everyone and save face for the leader of the Bloody Dagger adventures. However, before his enormous fist-like condensed from true origin could even touch Ji Tianqing, it was as if his entire body had been rammed by a raging bull. He flew backwards in a sorry state and crashed onto the ground with his limbs spread out. Plop! A muffled sound was heard and the entire hall fell silent. Ma Dahou lay on the ground with a pale face. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He was in a daze and could not get up. The crowd did not see Ji Tianqing make a move. They only saw Ma Dahou fly backward. This strange scene immediately left everyone dumbstruck, their hearts beating wildly. What happened? That guy did not make a move. How did Ma Dahou fly backward? I know. It's his spiritual sense. That guy used his spiritual sense to send Ma Dahou flying. Oh my god. He can send someone flying with his spiritual sense. This guy is so powerful. Ji Tianqing glanced at the crowd and was about to walk forward. Unexpectedly, another burly man with a full beard stopped him with a solemn expression. Little brother, I admit that you're very strong, but you must pay the price for humiliating our devouring dragon adventurer group. The robust man twisted his neck and cracked his knuckles. His entire body surged with a violent aura. He possessed a strength at the 3rd level of the Origin Core stage. He was the vice leader of the devouring dragon adventurer group, and had a little reputation in southern Desolation City. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly, and asked in a deep voice. Are you sure you want to make a move? The robust man puffed out his chest proudly, and said in a sonorous tone. It's related to the honor of our group. I have no choice but to step forward. Ji Tianqing said these 4 words expressionlessly. He raised his right hand like a bolt of lightning and slapped out. You'll have to bear the consequences. The robust man did not see his movement clearly at all. He did not even have the time to block before he was slapped flying. Bang! Amidst a muffled sound, the robust man's chest caved in, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew out 30 m away, passed through the hall's door, and fell onto the street outside the mercenary tower. He smashed onto the ground, and dust flew everywhere. After he landed, he lay on the ground and twitched. He struggled for a few times, but was unable to get up. Everyone in the hall stared with their eyes wide open when they saw this scene, and they revealed astonished expressions. Everyone was silent for a long time before they recovered from their shock, and they instantly emitted cries of surprise that rose and fell. Oh my god! This is too terrifying. Du Wei is a 3rd-level Origin Core stage expert, but he was actually slapped flying with a single slap. What terrifying strength! No wonder he's so arrogant. Hee, Ma Dahou and Du Wei are really unlucky today to have encountered a true expert. Since the moment the white-robed young man entered, I noticed that he had an imposing appearance and was in high spirits. He's absolutely not an ordinary person. The numerous mercenaries and adventurers whispered to each other as they looked at Ji Tianqing with gazes filled with reverence. The mercenary tower was like this. Everything was based on strength, and strength was respected. The numerous mercenaries and adventurers would often come to blows because of some grudges and friction. Ji Tianqing only made a move to teach Ma Dahou and Du Wei a lesson and didn't kill them. Everyone was already used to this since long ago. However, after everyone witnessed what happened to Ma Dahou and Du Wei with their own 2 eyes, they hurriedly retreated far away from Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept through the hall, and when he saw there wasn't a single outstanding person amongst the 100+ martial artists, he lost interest and wanted to take Ji Ku and leave. These people are too weak and can't be placed in an important position. Let's go back. Ji Ku nodded before turning around and leaving with Qin Shi. However, the 2 of them had just walked to the entrance of the hall when the voice of a young man sounded out from behind them. Young master, please wait. Ji Tianqing stopped when he heard this voice, and he turned around to look behind him. He saw a tall and sturdy young man wearing golden armor and carrying a golden sword on his back walking towards him with a smile on his face. This person had an extraordinary appearance and emitted a noble aura. Obviously, his status was extraordinary. Chapter 949. Ji Tianqing looked at the tall and sturdy young man, and his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. The mercenary building was a motley crew, and he didn't expect that a Sky Origin stage expert would appear. Moreover, this tall and sturdy young man wearing golden armor and carrying a golden sword on his back was obviously not a human. He had a head of golden hair, dark golden pupils, and a nose that was flatter and wider than a human's. Especially his ears, which were half the size of a palm, pointed upwards, and had a layer of golden hair. However, his appearance didn't look ugly, and had a somewhat carefree and unrestrained temperament, and also had a mysterious temperament unique to a different race. The blond young man walked in front of Ji Tianqing, cupped his hands in salute, and said with a smile, "Young master, can I have a word with you?" Ji Tianqing roughly guessed his intention, and calmly nodded. The blond young man took him out of the hall, and walked to the side of the mercenary building to an empty alley. After the three of them stood still, Ji Tianqing opened his mouth and asked, "Sire, what can I do for you?" The blond young man cupped his hands in salute and said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Shi Zhongjian, a prince of the Golden Lion clan. May I ask this young master's name?" Golden Lion clan? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and secretly thought, "Sure enough, it's a different race, and a mysterious race that I've never heard of." He calmly replied, "I'm Ji Tianqing." Shi Zhongjian didn't have any unusual reaction, and still maintained a polite smile and said, "Young Master Ji, you too want to explore the southern wasteland Great Lake, right? It just so happens that I also want to go to the southern wasteland Great Lake. I've been looking at the mercenary building for 2 days, but I haven't been able to recruit suitable people. Just now, when young Master Ji entered the hall, I saw that young Master Ji's skills were extraordinary, and you're the person I've been looking for. Here, I sincerely invite the two of you to join my Divine Lions Adventurer group. We can help each other, work together, and explore the southern wasteland Great Lake together." Ji Tianqing slightly frowned and expressionlessly asked, "Divine Lions Adventurer group? How many people do you have? What are their strengths?" Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment, then quickly explained, "My Divine Lions Adventurer group was only established yesterday, and I am currently alone. I have not recruited the right people. However, as long as the two of you are willing to join us, we will have 3 people. Moreover, we are all Sky Origin stage cultivators. We will be able to explore the southern wasteland Great Swamp, with twice the result with half the effort. We will be invincible." Shi Zhongjian's face was filled with anticipation. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Ji Ku immediately burst into laughter, looking at him with a strange look in her eyes. Ji Tianqing also looked at him, as if he was looking at an idiot, and asked, "You dare to call yourself an adventurer team by yourself? And they even invited us to join them?" Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment and asked doubtfully, "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" "Young Master Ji, as the saying goes, the beginning is always the hardest. As long as the two of you join my Divine Lions Adventurer group, the 3 of us are Sky Origin stage cultivators. We will definitely attract a lot of experts to join us and work for us." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said expressionlessly, "If you want to join forces with me, then cancel your Divine Lions Adventurer group. We don't need this kind of false reputation, and we don't need to find more people. Warriors below the Sky Origin stage will only be a burden to us, and are useless. In addition, I will be in charge of the itinerary and arrangements. To put it bluntly, you have to listen to me." This, Shi Zhongjian was stunned. He fell into a dilemma and hesitation. "Young Master Ji, is this appropriate? Forming an adventurer group to explore the southern wasteland Great Swamp is my plan. In any case, I am the prince of the Golden Lion clan. Of course, you have to listen to me." Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianqing turned around and left without hesitation. Seeing him and Ji Ke turn around and leave, Shi Zhongjin quickly followed and anxiously shouted, "Hey! Young Master Ji, don't go. I haven't finished speaking yet." Ji Tianqing ignored him and continued to walk out with an expressionless face. Ji Ke followed behind him, pursing her lips and secretly laughing. Shi Zhongjin saw that Ji Tianqing didn't give him any face and was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He weighed and struggled for a moment before shouting, "Young Master Ji, I promise you, I can give up the Divine Lions Adventurer group and join you. However, I also have my own goals and plans. We have to get along as equals and help each other." Ji Tianqing glanced at him, then walked out of the alley without saying a word, and walked onto the main street. "Is this still not enough?" Shi Zhongjin followed closely behind him. After struggling for a while, he helplessly shouted, Okay, I will agree to all of it. I am willing to join your group. I will listen to you on the itinerary, and the itinerary." Seeing that Shi Zhongjin had compromised, Ji Tianqing stopped. Shi Zhongjin suddenly felt relieved. He squeezed out a smile and said, "Young Master Ji, then we have a deal. I wish us a happy cooperation." Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile. He looked at him and said, "Don't worry, I haven't agreed to accept you. Let me ask you, have you ever entered the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp? Do you have any experience in exploration?" Shi Zhongjin suddenly revealed an embarrassed expression. He scratched his head and said, "This is my first time in the Southern Wasteland City. I have never entered the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp. Before, I have always been in seclusion in the sect. I have almost never explored the dangerous places and ruins. Because of this, I want to form an adventurer group and recruit people to explore the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked in a playful tone, "In this case, what is the meaning of you joining us? What can you do? How can you help us?" Shi Zhongjin frowned. He thought for a while and said confidently, "I am at the 4th level of the Sky Origin stage. I am proficient in the secret sword art of the Golden Lion clan. I am very powerful. Haha." Ji Ke couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ji Tianqing also rolled his eyes and said angrily, "I am sorry, you can't even take one hit from me." Shi Zhongjin suddenly felt ashamed. His face flushed red, and he looked helpless. Ji Ke covered her small mouth and smiled even more brightly. She whispered to Ji Tianqing, "Brother Tianqing, this guy seems to be traveling for the first time. He is so silly." Ji Tianqing just nodded and didn't say anything. However, he had another idea in his mind. This guy is the prince of the Golden Lion clan. His identity is mysterious, and it is his first time to leave the sect. What kind of sect can cultivate a young genius at the 4th level of the Sky Origin stage? With this guy's talent and strength, even in the Central Plains, he is qualified to be a prince in the royal palace. It seems that his clan and sect are not simple. At this time, Ji Ke saw Shi Zhongjin's uneasy appearance. He couldn't bear it, so he asked, "Shi Zhongjin, do you have a map of the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp? A detailed map?" Chapter 950. It was inconvenient to talk on the street, so the three of them returned to the inn. In the room, the three of them sat around a round table, looking down at a map on the table. This was a map engraved on golden paper. When rolled up, it would be a golden ball. When spread out, it could cover the entire table. The map clearly depicted the entire Southern Wasteland Great Swamp. Every area was clearly marked. Mountains, rivers, forests, and swamps were all clearly visible. There were more than 100 names on the map. The terrain and routes between each area were also clearly marked. There were even hundreds of dangerous areas and dozens of safe areas on the map. All in all, this was a very detailed map. It was 10 times more detailed than the one Ji Tianqing bought. The map marked 50% of the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp. Only the swamp area in the middle was still blurry. Ji Tianqing could see that this golden paper map was very old. It was at least 200 to 300 years old. Moreover, this map was definitely not made by a Sky Origin expert. At least several spirit refining experts were needed to explore the Southern Wasteland Great Swamp so clearly. After Ji Tianqing finished looking, Shi Zhongjian put away the golden paper map. He rolled it into a golden ball and put it into his interspatial ring. He quietly observed Ji Tianxing's reaction and asked tentatively, "Young Master Ji, is this map of mine very detailed?" "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "It is very detailed. But looking at this map, it is at least 200 to 300 years old. I'm afraid many things have changed." "Shi Zhongjian, where did you get this map?" Shi Zhongjian hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Young Master Ji, please forgive me for not being able to answer this question. This is my secret." Ji Tianxing stopped asking. Jiku rolled her eyes and had an idea. She pretended to be unhappy and said in a serious tone, "Shi Zhongjian, this map is very important. It is related to our itinerary and safety. You have to tell us where you came from. Moreover, since you want to join our team, we have to trust each other. We can't hide anything. Otherwise, how can we overcome the difficulties and face the dangers together?" Shi Zhongjian frowned and thought for a moment. He nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, what you said makes sense. All right, then I'll be honest. This map was given to me by the sect master when I left the sect. This map is indeed 300 years old. It was made by the sect's Grand Elder. He combined the experiences of several soul refinement realm experts when they explored the Great Lake. He spent several years repeatedly verifying and deducing, and it is absolutely accurate." Upon hearing Shi Zhongjian's words, Ji Tianxing and Jiku looked at each other and had the same thought in their minds. Isn't this Shi Zhongjian's thoughts too simple? With just a few words he spilled the beans. Fortunately, we are not evil people. If this fellow had met a cunning and vicious person, he would have definitely suffered. Shi Zhongjian saw that the two of them were silent, so he quickly added, "Young Master Ji, I'm telling the truth. You must believe me. I can see that you have an extraordinary temperament, so I'm sure you have an extraordinary status. I'm willing to trust you, so I'm telling you these secrets." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a serious tone, "All right, since you're so sincere, it's a deal." Shi Zhongjian saw that he nodded and felt relieved. He smiled and said, "That's great. I wish us a happy cooperation. All right, young Master Ji, are we really not recruiting more people?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said, "There's no need. The quality of soldiers is more important than quantity. Anyone below the sky origin realm will only be a burden." Shi Zhongjian nodded in agreement and asked, "Young Master Ji, when will we depart?" "We'll rest for 2 days. We'll depart early in the morning the day after tomorrow." Ji Tianxing set the time without hesitation. After that, Shi Zhongjian also stayed in the inn and recuperated in peace. The three of them rested in the inn for 2 days. On the morning of the third day, they left the inn together. After leaving the southern wasteland city, the three of them flew into the sky and headed south as fast as lightning. While they were flying, Ji Tianxing told Shi Zhongjian and Jiku about their next itinerary. "After we enter the southern wasteland Great Swamp, our first goal is to explore the Evil Dragon Pond. Among the 3 places I want to explore, the Evil Dragon Pond is the closest to us. It's at the edge of the Great Swamp, among the mountains. With our speed, we should arrive at the Evil Dragon Pond by tomorrow evening. Of course, that's if we don't run into any danger on the way and don't waste time." Shi Zhongjian was suddenly interested. His eyes lit up. The Evil Dragon Pond? Just from the name, it sounded very powerful. Could it be that there was an evil dragon hiding there? Was it entrenched in the pool and had many demonic beasts under its rule? "Young Master Ji, are we going to catch that evil dragon? If we can catch a flood dragon, I'm so excited just thinking about it." Apparently, it was Shi Zhongjian's first time to travel outside. He was very interested in adventure and exploring dangerous places. Even though his goal had nothing to do with the Evil Dragon Pond, he was excited when he heard the name. He was looking forward to it. It couldn't be helped. He was like a blank piece of paper. Everything in the outside world was new to him. Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a playful tone, "I'm going to the Evil Dragon Pond to investigate something. As for whether we can catch that evil dragon, it depends on its strength. Lion, if we can catch that evil dragon, I'll give it to you." "Ah, really?" Shi Zhongjian's body suddenly shook. He was so excited that he almost fell from the sky. Young Master Ji, that's a flood dragon. Can we really catch it? Are you really willing to give it to me? Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. Of course. The sudden surprise made Shi Zhongjian's blood boil. He couldn't believe it. When he was cultivating in the sect, he read books about flood dragons. He dreamed of having a flood dragon as his mount one day. How majestic would it be to ride a flood dragon and travel the world? Seeing him so excited, Jika couldn't help but laugh. Lion, don't be so happy. We may not be able to see that evil dragon or catch it. What if that evil dragon is extremely powerful? Let alone catching it, I'm afraid our lives will be in danger. That's true. Shi Zhongjian immediately quieted down. His blood and excitement dissipated. Jika's eyes flashed cunningly. He said playfully, Lion, do you really want to see a real flood dragon? Of course. I want to see it even in my dreams. Shi Zhongjian nodded without hesitation. Jika smiled even more playfully. Then you can ask Brother Tianxing. He can fulfill your wish. Shi Zhongjian was very confused. He looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion. Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. He waved his hand and released the little black dragon from the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Roar! With a flash of black light, an earth-shattering dragon roar burst out and resounded through the clouds. Swoosh! The black light flew into the sky and instantly grew to a length of 100 meters. It turned into a black flood dragon with bone-chilling cold. Without a doubt, this was the little black dragon. It had been sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch for 2 months. It had finally fused with the dragon crystal and successfully broken through to the divine origin stage. Shi Zhongjian's eyes widened when he saw the little black dragon's true dragon body. His body stiffened, and he stood rooted to the ground. Ah, this is a black dragon. The incomparable surprise and shock made his heart stop, and he forgot to breathe. Chapter 951. Thump! Shi Zhongjian fell from the sky and smashed into the forest below. A deep hole was left in the earth, and several large trees were also struck down. Shi Zhongjian was in a sorry state from the fall. His body was covered in mud, but he did not feel any pain. Filled with excitement, he immediately climbed out of the hole and flew back into the sky. Swish! He flew in front of the little black dragon and stared at the little black dragon at close range. His eyes filled with excitement. Wow, it really is a flood dragon, and an extremely rare black dragon. Young Master Ji, you're too awesome. You actually have a flood dragon. Oh my god, this is my lifelong dream. Shi Zhongjian was so excited that his face was flushed red. He felt like he was in a dream. He couldn't help but reach out to touch the little black dragon. However, the little black dragon had an aloof expression and turned its head away. Shi Zhongjian did not feel embarrassed. He reluctantly withdrew his hand and flew back to Ji Tianxing's side. Young Master Ji, I want to ask you for a favor. Ji Tianxing looked at him with a smile and asked, Oh, you're already calling me by honorifics? What do you want to do? Shi Zhongjian awkwardly scratched his head and explained, When I was young, I dreamed of having a flood dragon and riding it to soar through the world. On that snowy night, I begged my master for 3 days to catch a flood dragon for me. My master went to the Eastern Sea and only returned 3 years later. She did not catch a flood dragon, but she was covered in injuries and almost lost her life. How powerful and noble is a flood dragon? How could mortals like us tame one? I almost caused my master to lose her life and be punished by the sect to face the wall for 5 years. Sigh, I digress. Young Master Ji, I want to borrow your black dragon to ride, just for a moment. Can you fulfill my childhood wish? As long as you help me fulfill this wish, I will follow your lead and treat you with absolute respect. Ji Tianxing pointed at the 100-meter-long black dragon and smiled. The black dragon is so large. Are you sure you want to ride it and not ride it? Shi Zhongjian lowered his head to look at his 1-meter-long legs, then looked at the black dragon's 8-meter-thick body, and immediately laughed awkwardly. Let's go. Let's continue our journey. Ji Tianxing smiled and flew onto the little black dragon's back with Ji Ke. Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly flew over and landed on the black dragon's back with excitement. The little black dragon carried the three of them and flew through the sky at lightning speed, flying towards the southern wasteland Great Marsh. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke stood side by side, facing the cold wind high up in the sky. Their bodies were still straight and proud. The two of them looked at the mountains and forests beneath their feet, and then at the towering mountain in front of them. However, Shi Zhongjin quietly squatted down and reached out to touch the dragon scales on the back of the black dragon. His face was full of curiosity, and he even let out a sound of praise. It really is a black dragon, a real flood dragon. Who would have thought that I would actually be able to see a flood dragon, and even have the honor of riding it? At this time, the little black dragon shouted in a low voice. Old Ji, this guy is secretly touching me. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke turned to look behind them, and saw Shi Zhongjin squatting on the black dragon's back, his hands still touching the dragon scales. Shi Zhongjin's body stiffened, and he looked up at the two of them. Seeing the two of them not knowing whether to laugh or cry, Shi Zhongjin awkwardly smiled. Ahem. Young Master Ji, I've embarrassed myself in front of you. I just couldn't help myself. Ji Ke couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and said to the little black dragon, Little black dragon, don't be so stingy. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat from letting him touch you. The little black dragon was silent for a moment before it said in a low, muffled voice, But he's a man. PFFF. Ji Ke's face flushed red, and she finally couldn't hold back her laughter. Not long after, the little black dragon carried everyone over 500 kilometers. They crossed the vast forest, and finally entered the southern wasteland Great Marsh. In front of them was an undulating mountain range, filled with dark green primordial forests. There were countless towering mountains thousands of feet high in the mountain range, all of them shrouded in white clouds. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was rich in these mountains. There were countless types of spiritual flowers and plants in the dense forest. Demon beasts also gathered in large groups and ran amok. The little black dragon flew over the peaks of the mountains, its speed as fast as lightning. Although there were many demon beasts and birds in the sky, they were all intimidated by the dragon's aura and didn't dare to approach. Ji Tianxing and the other two stood on the black dragon's back and looked down at the boundless mountain range below. They could feel the vast and ancient aura that assaulted their senses. Of course, they would also occasionally see a few adventurer groups in the mountains. They were harvesting spirit herbs or hunting demon beasts. As time passed, the little black dragon continued to fly into the depths of the mountains. The world became more and more vast, and the mountains became more and more steep. There were more and more demon beasts in the mountains, and they were also more powerful. There were also fewer and fewer adventurers exploring the mountains. The day quickly passed. When night fell, the world was shrouded in darkness. There was no moon in the night sky. The little black dragon had already flown 10,000 miles, carrying the group into the depths of the mountains. In the middle of the night, the little black dragon was flying over a mountain thousands of feet high. A ball of dazzling golden light suddenly lit up the summit of the mountain. A golden silhouette as large as a palace shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning, hurtling toward the little black dragon. Ji Tianxing and the other two were immediately alerted. They turned their heads and saw that it was a massive golden eagle. This golden eagle was as large as a palace, and its wingspan was 100 meters. Its appearance was incomparably majestic, unlike that of an ordinary demon beast. Ji Tianxing immediately recognized it. It was an adult blazing golden eagle, a demon beast with a top-tier bloodline. Its strength had reached the 3rd level of heaven origin stage. No wonder it dares to attack us. Ji Tianxing coldly snorted, and was about to strike and kill the eagle. However, Shi Zhongjin was even faster than him. His figure flashed, and turned into a golden stream of light, rushing towards the flaming golden eagle. Vile beast, how dare you attack a black dragon? You're courting death. He was currently infatuated with the little black dragon, and cared for it 100 times more than a lover. How could he allow a demon beast to attack the little black dragon? He angrily roared, and his body shone with golden light, forming a pair of golden wings. He unsheathed the golden sword on his back with both hands. Sky Lion Sacred Sword. Shi Zhongjian angrily roared, and wielded the golden sword with both hands. He unleashed his full strength, and slashed out 100-meter-long golden sword. This was his secret sword technique of the Golden Lion tribe, one of his trump cards. The sword seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. It was somewhat similar to Ji Tianxing's Metal Emperor Slash. Its power was comparable to that of a 5th-level Heaven Origin stage cultivator. The blazing golden eagle pounced toward the little black dragon. It was too fast for it to dodge, even when it sensed something was wrong. Pung! The gigantic golden sword that could split heaven and earth struck the flaming golden eagle, causing an earth-shattering boom to erupt. Immediately, the majestic blazing golden eagle was cleaved in half by the enormous golden sword. Blood splattered everywhere. The enormous golden sword didn't lose any of its power. It continued to strike the mountain below. Chapter 952. The ferocious flaming golden eagle was slain by Shi Zhongjian before it could even touch the little black dragon. There was also a 10,000-meter-tall mountain that was cleaved in half by his sword. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku raised their eyebrows at this scene. A hint of surprise flashed through their eyes. I didn't expect this guy to be so powerful. It's actually comparable to the full-powered attack of a 5th-level Sky Origin stage cultivator. The Golden Lion clan's secret sword techniques are truly extraordinary. Ji Tianxing nodded his head slightly and exclaimed. Ji Ku chuckled and said, "He's so infatuated with the little black dragon. It's like he's fallen in love with a beauty at first sight." That flaming golden eagle tried to attack the little black dragon. How could it have ended well? The little black dragon said sullenly, "Cuckoo, don't make it sound so mushy. I don't even want to carry him anymore." Ji Ku wanted to laugh, but held back. Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this moment Qian Yu, who was resting in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, interjected with a teasing tone. "Little black dragon, don't look down on him. He truly loves you. I saw him lying on your back, hugging and touching you. He wanted nothing more than to kiss you." The little black dragon didn't say anything. After a long while, he said in a low muffled voice, "Old Ji, I'm going back to the pouch to rest. Let Qian Yu carry you." Ha ha ha. Qian Yu couldn't stop laughing. He said proudly, "The pouch has been monopolized by me. There's no place for you. Don't come back." The little black dragon had a belly full of anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. At this moment, Shi Zhongjian flew back and landed on the little black dragon's back. He looked at Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku and asked expectantly, "Young Master Ji, little sister Ji Ku, how was it? The Heavenly Lion Sacred Sword was pretty good, right?" Ji Tianxing nodded and gave a fair evaluation. "Yes, he does have some outstanding qualities," said Ji Tianxing. Shi Zhongjian was filled with joy and satisfaction after receiving his affirmation. The little black dragon said in a heavy voice, "Shi Zhongjian, I won't carry you. You can fly behind me." Shi Zhongjian felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head as he asked in astonishment, "Little black dragon, why aren't you carrying me? I just saved you." The little black dragon hesitated for a moment before saying in a deep voice, "Only if you promise that you will know your place and stop touching me." Shi Zhongjian looked embarrassed. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ku immediately turned their faces away. They held back their laughter, but their shoulders kept shaking. After a while, Shi Zhongjian assured the little black dragon that he would behave himself. The little black dragon then continued its journey, carrying the group towards the evil dragon pool. The night passed quickly, and they didn't encounter any more danger. It wasn't until noon the next day that the little black dragon flew near a mountain range shrouded in white clouds that it finally slowed down. It followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and slowly moved forward in the mountains, circling and dancing. Ji Tianxing looked down at the mountains and forests below, his sharp eyes searching for something. Shi Zhongjian looked confused and hurriedly asked, "Young Master Ji, what are you looking for? Let me help you." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "This place is about 20,000 miles away from the southern wasteland city. According to the map, the evil dragon pool should be in this area." "The evil dragon pool? We've arrived so quickly?" Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He hurriedly took out the map to compare. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "No need for the map. I've memorized it all." Ah! Shi Zhongjian was shocked and asked in disbelief. "Such a complicated map with tens of thousands of lines and thousands of regions. You've memorized it all?" "Yes," Ji Tianqing calmly replied. His eyes continued to search the mountains. Shi Zhongjian was silent. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a complicated expression. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Who exactly is this young Master Ji? He is powerful, mysterious, and has a black dragon. He only saw the map once in the inn, but he has memorized it all. This is unbelievable. Fortunately, he is a gentleman. If he was a treacherous person, I would have been useless after memorizing the map. He could have just left me and acted alone. Thinking of this, Shi Zhongjian was even more in awe of Ji Tianqing. At this time, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed. He shouted, "Found it! It's over there!" Shi Zhongjian and Ji Ke looked in the direction he was pointing. They saw a deep valley surrounded by mountains 100 miles away. In the valley surrounded by dark green forests, there was a jade pool with a radius of dozens of miles. It was noon. The sun shone on the surface of the pool, reflecting golden light. It was very beautiful. The pool was green and clear, as calm as a mirror. The little black dragon carried the three of them to the top of the jade pool. They floated 1,000 meters above the pool. The three of them looked down at the jade pool and carefully observed it. They saw that the jade pool with a radius of more than 50 miles was bottomless. It was deathly silent. The pool was surrounded by dark green forests. There were many strange flowers and plants growing in the forest, which gave off a strong aura of green wood. However, the forest was also silent. There were no traces of demon beasts. "Big brother Tianqing, this place is a little strange. It's too quiet. There isn't even a bird, snake, or insect." Ji Ke frowned, vaguely feeling that something was wrong. Shi Zhongjian was also puzzled. He whispered, "I thought that the evil dragon would command many demon beasts. I didn't expect that there wouldn't even be a bird around. Young Master Ji, is that evil dragon hiding in the pool? Will it show itself often? How can we see it?" However, Ji Tianqing remained silent and did not say anything. He was using divine telekinesis voice transmission in his mind to summon buried heaven. Burial of heaven, wake up. I have something to ask you." Burial of heaven had been sleeping in Kenshin's tomb, quietly recovering its strength. Ji Tianqing called it a few times before it finally woke up. It replied in a dull voice, "Why are you calling me?" Ji Tianqing quickly explained, "Burial of heaven, I have entered the great swamp of the southern wasteland. I have asked around. There are 3 very strange places where there have been strange phenomena. Maybe we can find some clues there. This is one of the 3 places called the Evil Dragon Pool. It is said that there is an evil dragon hiding there." He told them the legend of the Evil Dragon Pool. After listening, Burial of Heaven asked calmly, "What is the relationship between the evil dragon and my original form, the broken sword?" Ji Tianqing thought for a while and analyzed. "Burial of Heaven, your original form, the broken sword, is a divine sword. A divine sword is different from an ordinary sword. After sleeping for 1,000 years, it is very likely that it has gained some intelligence. If the broken sword fell into this pool, after 1,000 years, it could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Maybe it could recover some of its strength. If the broken sword flew up to the sky, it might show some earth-shattering phenomena, causing the heaven and earth to change. Ordinary people are ignorant and don't dare to come close to check. They only see it from afar and mistakenly think that the evil dragon is causing trouble. Therefore, people believe the rumors and believe that there is an evil dragon here." Chapter 953. Although the broken sword was Burial of Heaven's original body, it had been thousands of years ago. However, the broken sword had been lost for thousands of years. Buried Heaven had no idea what the broken sword looked like now. It thought about it carefully and felt that Ji Tianqing's guess was reasonable. It wasn't impossible. Ji Tianqing flew above the lake of jade and observed it closely. He asked Burial of Heaven, "Burial of Heaven, can you sense the aura of the original body of the divine sword?" Burial of Heaven sensed for a while and said in a low voice, I can't. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered doubtfully, is it because you can't sense the aura of the divine sword? Or is the divine sword not here at all? Burial of Heaven was silent and didn't answer. After all, thousands of years had passed. Everything would change. Things that were once familiar would become unfamiliar and unknown. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else. He released his spiritual sense into the lake and began to search carefully. In the sky, Shi Zhongjian and Ji Ko also flew to the surface of the lake and spread out to search. Although the legend said that the evil dragon was very fierce and had the power to summon the wind and rain, the people didn't fear it. However, the three of them were not afraid at all. Instead, they were very interested and couldn't wait to find that evil dragon. Ji Tianqing wanted to find the evil dragon because he wanted to see if it was related to the divine sword. Shi Zhongjian wanted to see the evil dragon because he still remembered Ji Tianqing's words. He wanted to subdue the evil dragon. Unfortunately, the three of them spent 2 hours searching around the Lake of Jade several times, but they didn't find any trace of the evil dragon. Not to mention the evil dragon, the three of them didn't even find a small fish or a small shrimp. This Lake of Jade was like a pool of stagnant water. There were no living things at all. The three of them gathered together and began to discuss countermeasures. Young Master Ji, what should we do? Big Brother Tianqing, do you have any ideas? Shi Zhongjian and Ji Ku both looked at Ji Tianqing with anticipation in their eyes. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. He analyzed. According to the past, the evil dragon doesn't show up often. It only comes out every few years to stir up trouble. If we don't have heaven-defying luck, we won't encounter it on its own. Therefore, we can only think of a way to make some noise and force it to show itself. Ji Ke vaguely understood what he meant and nodded in agreement. Shi Zhongjian was at a loss and asked, how do we force it out? Ji Tianqing didn't answer. Instead, he revealed a playful smile and slowly raised his right palm to slap the pool. A huge golden palm shadow that was as big as a house appeared. It erupted with an earth-shattering might as it slapped the surface of the water with a bang sound. Instantly, a muffled sound spread over a radius of 100 miles, reverberating fiercely between the mountains. A huge crater appeared on the calm surface of the water. Huge waves that were 100 meters high were stirred up, and water splashed everywhere. Such a huge commotion was enough to alarm everyone within a radius of 100 miles. Seeing this, Shi Zhongjian suddenly understood. He waved his palms and unleashed a golden light, using his secret technique. I see. Young Master Ji, watch my ultimate move. As he spoke, he activated his vast and mighty true essence, and condensed it into a pair of huge golden claws that were as big as a palace. He slapped the water fiercely. Sky-seizing claw. Bang bang. The two huge golden claws created two huge craters on the surface of the water. Water splashed everywhere, and huge waves splashed everywhere. Then, Shi Zhongjian manipulated the two huge claws and quickly stirred them in the water. Suddenly, the entire Lake of Jade boiled. The water in the lake surged violently, creating layers of huge waves. As the two huge claws moved faster and faster, a huge whirlpool appeared in the middle of the lake. After 100 breaths, the whirlpool expanded to a radius of 15 miles, occupying almost half of the lake. The entire lake was stirred up by Shi Zhongjian. Huge waves that were hundreds of meters high were stirred up, crazily washing the forests and mountains around the lake. Shi Zhongjian stopped and smiled proudly. Young Master Ji, even if the lake is 1,000 meters deep, as long as the evil dragon is hiding at the bottom of the lake, it will definitely be awakened. Ji Tianqing stared at the lake for a while, and did not see the evil dragon. He could not help but sigh. Unfortunately, the lake is more than 1,000 meters deep. It's like a bottomless well. Shi Zhongjian was unwilling to give up. He stared at the lake with his eyes wide open, and prayed silently in his heart. Soon 15 minutes passed. The huge whirlpool that stirred the lake slowly dissipated. The surface of the lake became calm again. The evil dragon did not appear. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, we failed. We have to think of another way. Shi Zhongjian had to accept this reality. He asked with disappointment, Young Master Ji, Could the evil dragon have left long ago? Or maybe we're in the wrong place. Ji Tianxing did not answer him. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he said in a low voice, "Let's try another method. If it still fails, we can only give up." Then he waved at the little black dragon. The little black dragon immediately understood. It swooped down from the sky and stopped on the surface of the lake. Then, it opened its huge dragon mouth and let out an earth-shattering dragon roar at the lake. Roar! The little black dragon used all its power to let out a dragon roar. It was full of energy and shook the 9 heavens. The entire pool was shaken to the point where the water in the pool was surging like boiling water. The mountains around the pool also trembled a few times. Shi Zhongjian's eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "Haha, this method is too wonderful. No matter how deep the evil dragon is hiding, it will definitely appear when it hears the roar of its own kind." After he finished speaking, he looked at the pool expectantly like Ji Tianxing. Jiko also stared at the lake. He clenched his fists tightly, and his heart was filled with anticipation. Unknowingly, 100 breaths of time passed. The dragon roar that reverberated through the mountains gradually dissipated. The lake also calmed down. However, the evil dragon still did not appear. The anticipation and hope in the eyes of the 3 people gradually dissipated, and was gradually replaced by disappointment. A moment later, Ji Tianxing sighed in disappointment. Sigh. It seems that the evil dragon will not appear. Shi Zhongjian was unwilling to give up. He probed. "Young Master Ji, I still have one last idea. We can dive into the lake and find the evil dragon at the bottom." Ji Tianxing glanced at him and said in a serious tone, "This lake is the evil dragon's lair. It must be very dangerous. If you rashly enter the lake, your life will be in danger." Shi Zhongjian silently weighed the pros and cons. Then he nodded and said, "It's fine. I'm not afraid of danger." Ji Tianxing frowned and was about to persuade him. At this time, he suddenly saw a huge black shadow under the calm lake. It was quickly rising and growing. The mysterious black shadow was hazy and could not be seen clearly. However, he felt an extremely dangerous aura. Not good. The evil dragon is coming out. Get out of the way. Subconsciously, he let out a low growl and retreated high up into the sky with Ji Ke. Shi Zhongjian came back to his senses. He turned his head and saw the huge black shadow under the water. His first reaction was not to retreat. Instead, he was filled with excitement and shouted in a low voice. Chapter 954. Whoosh! The next moment, the massive and mysterious black silhouette in the pool charged out of the water, creating a huge splash. A huge dark gray flood dragon rushed out from the pool and rushed into the sky as fast as lightning. Boom! The excited Shi Zhongjian had no time to dodge and was sent flying by the dragon's head. Soon after, the dark gray flood dragon flew out of the pool and viciously lunged at the little black dragon in the sky. Only now did the crowd clearly see that this dark gray flood dragon was over 1,000 meters long. It was massive and mighty to the extreme. Its head was as large as a house, and its dark green eyes were as large as water tanks. Its massive body, 100 feet thick, was covered in dark gray scales. Its 4 large claws exuded a savage aura. Ji Tianxing instantly recognized it. When he probed its strength, his expression changed. It's an azure dragon. A soul-tempering azure dragon. At the same time, the azure dragon lunged in front of the little black dragon. It opened its bloody maw and let out a dragon's roar that shook the heavens. Roar! Ji Tianxing had originally thought that the azure dragon would directly attack the little black dragon. Just as he was preparing to use his full strength to block, the azure dragon stopped in front of the little black dragon. Its eyes were fixed on the little black dragon. Its body exuded an invisible dragon's might as it constantly uttered strange syllables. The little black dragon was 10 times smaller than the azure dragon. It was like a small snake in front of the azure dragon, appearing extremely weak. Hearing the azure dragon's voice, the little black dragon also constantly uttered strange syllables, as if communicating with the azure dragon. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke stood in the sky nearby, warily looking at the azure dragon. The two of them were ready to act. The moment the azure dragon showed any intention of attacking the little black dragon, they would immediately intervene. Fortunately, the azure dragon did not seem to have any enmity towards the little black dragon, nor did it show any signs of attacking. Soon, Shi Zhongjian flew over from the distance and landed beside Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. His hair was somewhat disheveled, and there was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The golden armor he wore had also dimmed. It was obvious that he was severely injured when he was sent flying by the azure dragon. However, he ignored his injuries and stared at the Song dragon curiously. His eyes shone with excitement. "Young Master Ji, what is that azure dragon doing?" Ji Tianxing calmly said. "It looks like he's communicating with the little black dragon." Oh, no wonder I couldn't understand a single word. It turns out that they were speaking Draconic. Shi Zhongjian nodded in realization. At this moment, the azure dragon and little black dragon conversed for a while before turning to look at Ji Tianxing and the others. It stared coldly at the three of them. Its body exuded a powerful and majestic aura, which caused a hurricane to form in the sky. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows. He secretly gathered his strength and prepared to defend against the azure dragon's attack. Shi Zhongjian was also eager to give it a try. He rubbed his palms together and looked at Song Long with eyes full of hope and desire. He waited for 100 breaths of time. Seeing that the azure dragon and the little black dragon were still talking, he became a little anxious. He lowered his voice and asked Ji Tianxing, "Young Master Ji, what are they talking about?" Ji Tianxing expressionlessly replied, "How would I know? I don't understand Draconic." Shi Zhongjian hesitated for a moment before asking, "Young Master Ji, then when do we make our move?" "Make our move?" Ji Tianxing raised his brows and looked at him in confusion. Shi Zhongjian's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "That's right. We're going to subdue this azure dragon." Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He unhappily said, "That azure dragon's strength has reached the spirit refinement realm. It's at least at the second or third level of the spirit refinement realm. Are you sure you want to make a move against it?" Shi Zhongjian was stunned. He subconsciously asked, "Young Master Ji, could it be that even you are not a match for that azure dragon?" Ji Tianxing tilted his head and looked at him in silence. Shi Zhongjian was silent for a moment. He unwillingly said, "Young Master Ji, since we can't do it the hard way, then let's do it the soft way." "What hard way or soft way? What are you trying to do?" Ji Tianxing frowned. He had a bad premonition. "Watch me." Shi Zhongjian didn't explain. He revealed a confident smile. Then, Shi Zhongjian waved at the little black dragon not far away. He loudly said, "Little black dragon, I have something to say to the azure dragon. Please help me translate it." As he spoke, he flew towards the azure dragon and the little black dragon. Ji Tianxing sensed that something was wrong. He worriedly said, "Lion, don't do anything rash. That azure dragon is not a kind creature." Shi Zhongjian waved his hand at him and said with a smile, "Young Master Ji, don't worry. I won't make a move against it. I'll have a good talk with it." Ji Tianxing was full of helplessness. He just wanted to roll his eyes at him. Ji Ke didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He anxiously and worriedly said, "Isn't this guy too stupid? Why hasn't he given up yet?" At the same time, the little black dragon turned to look at Shi Zhongjian. He anxiously said, "What are you doing here? Hurry up and leave. If I hadn't persuaded the azure dragon, it would have already attacked you." Shi Zhongjian didn't care. He excitedly flew to its side and looked at the azure dragon expectantly. "Hello, azure dragon. My name is Shi Zhongjian. I'm a prince of the Golden Lion clan and the second disciple of the Hidden God sect. I've always yearned to be a flood dragon since I was young." Shi Zhongjian revealed a sincere smile. He sincerely introduced himself to the azure dragon and blabbered on and on. However, the azure dragon looked down at him from above. Its large eyes were as cold as ice. There was no emotion in them. After Shi Zhongjian finished speaking, he hurriedly said to the little black dragon, "Little black dragon, hurry up and translate it for me." The little black dragon revealed a helpless expression. He hurriedly shouted to Ji Tianxing, "Old Ji, hurry up and send this idiot back." I've already asked clearly. The Azure Dragon has nothing to do with what we're looking for. Moreover, the Azure Dragon told us not to disturb its cultivation. It told us to hurry up and leave. Otherwise, it won't be polite. After saying this, he added in a serious tone, this Azure Dragon is extremely vicious and violent. For hundreds of years, it has wreaked havoc in a radius of 5,000 kilometers. It has swallowed and killed at least 10,000 people. Ji Tianxing nodded. He solemnly shouted to Shi Zhongjian, Lion, hurry up and come back. This Azure Dragon is an evil dragon. It has the strength of a spirit refinement realm cultivator. There's no way it can be tamed by you. Give up. Shi Zhongjian repeatedly shook his head. He said in a pleading tone, Young Master Ji, please let me try. Just treat it as fulfilling a wish of mine. If I miss this opportunity, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Ji Tianxing considered this for a moment. He helplessly nodded and said, All right. Then be careful. The little black dragon had nothing to say. It could only translate Shi Zhongjian's words to the Azure Dragon in the dragon language. After the Azure Dragon heard this, it coldly stared at Shi Zhongjian. It slowly extended a front claw toward him. Shi Zhongjian's spirits were immediately lifted. He excitedly welcomed the Azure Dragon's claw with open arms. Chapter 955. Bang! Shi Zhongjian was sent flying by the Azure Dragon's claw. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell into the pool. However, he did not seem to feel pain, as he hurriedly crawled out of the pool and flew back to the Azure Dragon. He shouted with an aggrieved expression, Hey, you despicable fellow! I was so kind to you, but you actually treated me like this. You really don't know how to appreciate kindness. Then, he hurriedly waved his hand at the little black dragon and said, You don't have to translate this sentence. Everyone was speechless. Shi Zhongjian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and circulated his energy to suppress his injuries. He continued to speak to the Azure Dragon. Azure Dragon, I invite you to leave this lousy pool with utmost sincerity. This place is too desolate. You must be bored and lonely here, right? Moreover, this place is very barren and scarce in resources. You have no future in cultivating here. Come back to the divine hidden sect with me. Our sect is very powerful and has abundant resources. We also have all sorts of ancient secret treasures and ultimate techniques. I guarantee that your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. Moreover, we can confer you the title of Divine Guardian Beast and give you the highest status and treatment. Think about it carefully. After speaking, Shi Zhongjian looked at the little black dragon expectantly and said, Little black dragon, quickly translate for him. The little black dragon hesitated for a moment and looked at Ji Tianxing's expression. Seeing that he did not stop it, it spoke to the Azure Dragon in the dragon language. The Azure Dragon was still expressionless after hearing it. Its eyes were as cold as ice. It once again stretched out its huge dragon claw and slowly extended it towards Shi Zhongjian. Shi Zhongjian's eyes lit up with the flames of hope. He looked at the Azure Dragon expectantly and asked, Azure Dragon, do you feel my sincerity? I'm inviting you with all my heart. Before he could finish speaking, the huge dragon claw swept towards him again. Bang! Shi Zhongjian was once again sent flying by the Azure Dragon's claw. He drew an arc in the air and fell towards the water in the distance. This time, his injuries were even more severe. The golden armor he was wearing was shattered, and his golden hair was scattered all over his body. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood and splashed it onto the water. Splash! Shi Zhongjian fell into the pool and sank to the bottom of the pool in a daze. It took him quite a while to wake up. He forced his heavily injured body to fly out of the pool, swaying as he flew back into the sky. Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke couldn't bear to see him in such a miserable state, and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Lion, don't be stubborn. Come back quickly. If you take another 2 hits, you'll be dead. Shi Zhongjian, can you not be so naive? The dragon race is proud, especially when this Azure Dragon is at the soul refinement realm. How could it possibly leave with you? Shi Zhongjian turned to look at the two of them and bowed. Young Master Ji, little sister Ji Ke, Thank you for your concern. I know that my thoughts and actions may seem foolish to you, but this is my long-cherished wish and dream. In order to realize this dream, I am willing to give up everything. Even if my dream is unreachable, I will fight for it with all my might. If I don't even dare to try, then what difference am I from a salted fish? Jiko was startled. He frowned and said, "This guy. What he said seems to make sense." Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and said, "Forget it, let him go. Even if we persuade him to come back, he won't give up." He had already mentally prepared himself. Even if Azure Dragon was enraged and wanted to kill them, he was confident that he could stop Azure Dragon and bring everyone to escape safely. At this moment, Shi Zhongjin swayed as he flew back to Azure Dragon. He forced himself to support his heavily injured body and stubbornly looked at Azure Dragon. He said sincerely, "Azure Dragon, although you've reached the soul refinement realm, you've cultivated for hundreds and thousands of years to have such powerful strength. But I'm different. I can reach your current strength in at most 20 years. I know you look down on me and think that I'm weak and unworthy to be your companion. But as long as you're willing to return to the sect with me, I can catch up to you, and even surpass you in at most 20 years. What future do you have in the great swamp of the southern wasteland? Can you reach the primordial spirit realm? Can you have a chance to touch the legendary heavenly tribulation? Only by following me will you have a chance and hope. I'll treat you like a lover, and take good care of you. I'll live and die with you and share trials and tribulations with you." Ji Tianxing and Jike frowned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The little black dragon couldn't help but mutter, "Azure Dragon is a man. Are you courting death?" Shi Zhongjin's expression was solemn as he said these words. He had the little black dragon translate them again. Song Long finally frowned after hearing the story. His icy eyes flickered with a sharp glint. But this time, it didn't reach out with its dragon claws. Instead, it opened its bloody mouth and let out a resounding dragon roar. Roar. It roared at the little black dragon and Shi Zhongjian, then roared in dragon language. The little black dragon immediately lowered its head and circled around Azure Dragon, explaining in dragon language. After saying this, it didn't care whether Shi Zhongjian agreed or not. It grabbed Shi Zhongjian with its dragon claws and flew toward Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke. "Old Ji, Azure Dragon is angry. It wants us to leave immediately, or it'll start a massacre. It hasn't attacked for my sake, but its patience has reached its limit." Ji Tianxing frowned as he silently weighed the pros and cons. This Azure Dragon has nothing to do with the divine sword. I don't need to waste time here. With its strength, even if I can defeat it, I'll have to pay a heavy price. Kuku, Shi Zhongjian, and the little black dragon are not its match. It's very likely that they'll be killed. It's impossible to subdue it. Even if it can't defeat it, it can still escape back into the pool. This pool is like a bottomless abyss. I don't know what dangers lie at the bottom of the pool. If I enter the pool and fight with it, I won't be able to gain anything. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing made up his mind. He flew onto the little black dragon's back with Ji Ke and quickly left the pool. The Azure Dragon hovered above the pool. Seeing the little black dragon carrying everyone away, it turned around and dove into the pool. Splash! The calm surface of the water splashed up, creating huge waves. After the Azure Dragon entered the water, it quickly disappeared. After a long time, the surface of the water returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. The little black dragon flew into the sea of clouds and quickly left the evil dragon pool. Shi Zhongjian was covered in blood. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. He looked miserable as he lay on the little black dragon's back, gasping for breath. Ji Tianxing cast a spell to suppress his injuries. He couldn't help but ask, "Shi Zhongjian, are you stupid?" Shi Zhongjian wasn't angry at all. His eyes were shining as he excitedly said, "That's great. I can see the hope of success. Young Master Ji, do you see? The Azure Dragon sent me flying twice before. But the last time, it only roared a few times and didn't attack me. What does this mean? It must have felt my sincerity, and its will has been shaken." Ji Tianxing was speechless. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.